Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your boy, the Anime Alba here, coming at you with parts 1 through 5 of What If Naruto Was Like Minato, the movie. And listen, just a few things I want to address. First and foremost, like, comment, subscribe, Discord link in the description. I'm going to keep this as short as possible so we can get you guys right on into the video. I hope you enjoy. If you did leave a comment, I'll be letting you know at the end. And also, the link to the story will be in the description. So without further ado, it's your boy, the Anime Alba, and let's get right on into the video. Naruto Uzumaki was not a normal boy by any means. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't your run-of-the-mill orphan. He was, as every orphan was, without a parent. He was, as every orphan was, lonely. He was, as every orphan was, sad. He wasn't, as almost every orphan was, looked at with pity and kindness, however. No, Naruto Uzumaki was looked at with disdain and hatred. Simply walking down the streets incurred several cruel beatings. He had no idea why, but the entire population of Konohagakure no Sato seemed to hate him. He had very few precious people. In fact, the only ones he could name off the top of his head were Hiruzen Sarutobi, or as he dubbed the Hokage, Gigi. Ayame, a girl who helped her father run a nearby ramen shop, and Teuchi, the father of said girl. It was sad, actually. A boy of his age, 5, being hated by everyone. Naruto had learned this early on in life. He was hated in the orphanage he lived in as well. Ever since he learned to walk on his own, the matron of the orphanage started treating him like trash. He was not allowed to play with the children of his age, or even when he managed to talk to them, they would sneer at him and told him in no uncertain words that a monster like him was not welcome in their group. He would get sad and then leave. Walking the streets of the village was like trial by fire for him. He had to take careful measures to remain as unnoticeable as possible. If he got noticed, a civilian would point at him, shouting to the others, "The demon is here, get him!" He would then run for his life, entering lanes and alleys, taking a shortcut through a shop, and entering from the front door and exiting from the back. Anything to escape the beatings. But it was suspicious that a 4-year-old boy was able to escape from the mobs. What no one, including Naruto, knew was that Naruto had some special quirks. Naruto had an eidetic memory, I believe that's how you pronounce it, the ability to remember and recall anything he sees or hears once in great detail. Naruto loved to read books, but didn't know why he could recall every page of the book, down to the exact word. He found it very useful and abused it shamelessly, reading all the books he was allowed to and then some. Without telling anyone, of course. He didn't tell this to anybody, not even Gigi, fearing if this got out, he would get beaten for having freakish traits. But also discovered the downside of having such an ability. One day, when running from a mob, he accidentally entered an alley which had a dead end. There was no escape for him that day. He was punched, kicked, in every part of his body until he fell unconscious. When he woke up very mysteriously in his room at the orphanage, healed up, he was very happy he did not die. However, when he tried to sleep that night, the beatings came back in full force in the form of nightmares. Because of his ability, he experienced the beatings down to the last detail. He couldn't sleep peacefully for several nights. Another one of his quirks was a sort of sensory ability. He could sense danger if it was coming to him. However, it was a subconscious ability of sorts, activating only when he was in danger. But it was very useful in avoiding punches and stones that came when his back was turned. The village's behavior in general towards Naruto caused him to develop a need for positive attention, but also a need to avoid people. Preferring to keep to himself, he would not actively seek attention, but would latch on like a leech to anyone who gave some form of care to him. Sadly, the number of people who did could be counted on one hand. That was the reason he turned to books. At least they didn't attack him outright and allowed him to read them. Almost no one wanted to associate with him, leading him to take refuge in books. They became his best friends, always making him smile when he had learned something new. Naruto had to force himself to learn reading and writing, as the teachers at the orphanage did as least they could to help him. They would simply thrust the book in his hands and go away to help other children. He learned early not to ask questions, receiving physical punishment whenever he did. He had read about various topics, but the one thing that stood out to him was the topic of Hokage. How the Hokage was the most powerful shinobi in the village and was responsible for the village's safety. He read how powerful the Shodai Hokage was, using his unique Kekkei ability, Bloodline Limit, I believe this was they're specifying, of Mokuton, the wood release. He was said to be the most powerful shinobi of his time, known as Shinobi no Kami, the god of shinobi, Hashirama Senju, along with Madara Uchiha, who were the two main founders of Konoha. Ironically, both were also bitter enemies, with Hashirama having to kill Madara to protect the village. The Naidame Hokage, Tobirama Senju, was the younger brother of Hashirama. He was and is still hailed as the most powerful Suiton user of all time. He was also hailed the fastest shinobi of his time, having created the famous Hiraishi no Jutsu. He was the one who started the Ninja Academy. Naruto took a liking to him, as he loved anything that was remotely associated with speed. The Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, that was his Jiji, was known as the Professor because he could use all nature transformations and had the unsurpassed knowledge of ninjutsu. Knowing all the techniques in Konoha saved for clan techniques, he also shared the title of Shinobi no Kami with Hashirama, because in his prime, he was the strongest of all Kages. Naruto was astounded. How powerful was the man he called his Jiji? Sarutobi was the sensei of the Densetsu no Sanin, the three legendary ninjas. Calm down real quick, you feel me? Who were among the most powerful shinobi in the world. The Yondaime Hokage was the one who became his favorite, to the point that Naruto considered him as an idol, aspiring to be like him. Minato Namikaze. When he was alive, he was considered the strongest of the Hokages and arguably the most dangerous man to have graced the world of shinobi, known as Konoha no Kiroi Senko. Kiroi? Something like that. He was also considered the fastest shinobi to ever live. He was famous because he took the Hiraishi no Jutsu, the jutsu used by the Nidaime, to levels unheard of. He was the one who single-handedly ended the Third Great Shinobi War, finishing off 1,000 Iwa shinobis by himself in the Battle of Kanabi Bridge. Naruto also took note that the Yondaime suspiciously looked very much like him if he grew up. Naruto compared their physical traits, more specifically those that stood out the most. They were both blonde, the hair color being nearly identical, with Naruto's a shade brighter, but the eyes were what took him by surprise. Those azure blue shades were what he had as well. Looking back at him in the mirror every day, he became even more suspicious. And during one of his outings, when his Jiji came to take him to Ichiraku Ramen that he loved so much, he asked him what it meant to be Hokage. Flashback. Let me get a drink, please. Alright, let me check real quick if this is still going. I hope it is. Alright, we're good. The old man stopped eating and looked at him, his eyes piercing him as if searching for something. He then smiled and said, "Perhaps you should ask me first, Naruto, what does it mean to be a shinobi?" Naruto looked surprised for a moment, but recovered and asked, "What does it mean to be a shinobi?" This time, Jiji answered, "To be a shinobi means to endure. A shinobi is one who can follow or lead others into any darkness and work together to overcome that darkness and make it out the other side. A shinobi walks towards danger. When everyone else is running away, that is because the duty of a shinobi is to look at any foe and simply say, 'Bring it.' That is because shinobi exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Naruto had a look of wonder on his face. He had no idea his Jiji was that wise. An answer like that changed Naruto's entire view of shinobi. At first, he thought that being a shinobi only meant performing cool jutsus and fighting in the name of your village. He had no idea the answer would be this deep in meaning. Sarutobi looked at Naruto, mentally smiled. He knew about Naruto's treatment by the villagers and his drive to become Hokage. He mused, perhaps I can give him a little insight on what being a Hokage means. He snapped out of his thoughts when Gigi said, Now that the answer is out of the way, I could tell you about what being a Hokage means. I know, Gigi. Those words stopped Hiruzen in his tracks. His head tilted in curiosity. You know what, Naruto? Naruto looked up, an understanding and respect in his eyes. Hiruzen was touched at the respect he was receiving from Naruto, but his curiosity was increasing. What does being a Hokage mean? Hiruzen stared at him silently, asking him to continue. Naruto spoke up. The Hokage is responsible for everything in this village. It's his responsibility to protect everyone here and to make sure they are safe and happy with their village. He tends to the finances of this village, the rules, the daily events, everything. He controls every single ninja who bears a leaf headband and basically directs when they live and die. This job is not for the faint of heart, and only for someone who loves this village deeply. At the end of his answer, he was staring back at his bowl. Hiruzen was shocked at the understanding Naruto showed of the position of Hokage. He had no idea that Naruto was this perceptive and knowledgeable. Teiuchi and Ayame had stopped working as well, staring at the blonde with wide eyes, along with the Hokage. It was simply unheard of. A 5-year-old showing such a deep understanding of something most people don't understand until much later in life. Hiruzen was shocked, so much so that he didn't even notice his jaw was hanging a bit. Such a deep perception, and insight at such a young age, he thought, with wonder. Only one person had showed such understanding like this, and he too was 3 years older. Itachi Uchiha was a prodigy among the likes of Kakashi Hatake and Minato Namikaze. Such a shame he was now missing in. Naruto looked up when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Gigi was looking at him with a strange expression. That is exactly what being a Hokage means, Naruto. A challenging smile broke out on Naruto's face and he declared, Then I will become Hokage someday, Gigi, and not just any Hokage. I will be the strongest there will be. Hiruzen chuckled, which soon turned to laughter. The father and daughter on the other side of the counter were also smiling fondly. Naruto frowned. What? I'm serious. He was hurt that Gigi saw his declaration as a joke. Hiruzen soon calmed down, smiling fondly at the boy. He remembered another Uzumaki who used to say the same thing. But he had strong feelings that Naruto would be right. He ruffled Naruto's head and said, I know, Naruto. I have no doubt you will. Flashback, and let me get another thing of water real quick. My throat is dry. Good. Alright. Ever since that day, Naruto studied even more rigorously and beginning physical training as well. Granted, a 4-year-old such as him could not do much, but he did his best. He ran 4 rounds around the village, did every exercise he could think of, and practiced his kunai and shuriken jutsu. He took those weapons by sneaking into the practice grounds and collecting them. To his surprise, the art of throwing shuriken and kunai came very natural to him. He started throwing after taking a book about weapons left behind on a training ground. He had shaken his head at the disrespect shown to the book, but took it with him anyway. Just 2 weeks of practice and he was throwing all bullseyes. That was not the only surprising thing. He had found that he could recover very quickly from physical exhaustion and wear and tear on his muscles. He recalled that he recovered surprisingly quick after the beating from the villagers. A bloodline, perhaps? He didn't dwell on it further, but filed it away for later. But today was special. So special that he would have to take extra measures in staying safe, because today was his birthday, and he was just kicked out of the orphanage. Roaming in the streets, he suspected what would happen in the evening. Today was the day the villagers celebrated as the Kyuubi festival, the day the Yondaime defeated the Kyuubi, and the day he would be beaten within an inch of his life or hunted and possibly killed. An epiphany struck him like lightning, causing him to suddenly stop in the middle of the streets. Yondaime, Kyuubi defeat, treatment of the villagers, Demon Boy, Gigi's avoidance of the topic? No, he wouldn't. Naruto ran from the streets, meandering between people with the grace of a seasoned dancer or flowing water. He ran like it was no one's business, reaching his favorite spot, the head of the Yondaime, in record time. Anyone who saw him had flashbacks of another blonde running like a possessed man. I needed to confirm whether it's true or not, he thought grimly, afraid of what he would find. He sat down on the head of the famed Hokage in a meditative posture and reached within, or rather spoke within. Kyuubi, if you are inside me, I want to meet you, please. For a full 5 minutes, there was no reply, and Naruto began to relax when something pulled on his mind. Naruto opened his eyes to find himself in a dark corridor. He narrowed his eyes. Is this my mindscape? He thought in disgust as he walked forward. He kept walking for a few minutes and stopped seeing some light at the end of the corridor. It seemed to pull him towards it. Time to find out what's at the end, he thought. He walked again and stopping only until the end. It was a huge room, so large and vast that the ceiling was impossible to find. He looked around, his eyes seeing black stone and nothing more. But the elephant in the room was a large iron-barred door with a paper on it that said seal. He gazed at the piece of paper, resignation written in his eyes. His azure eyes looked past the cage, looking for what he knew was in the cage. He was just waiting for the Kyuubi to open his eyes. Based on what he had read, the Kyuubi was a being of pure hatred and evil, a mindless beast capable of destruction or scare undreamt of. What the hell? Undreamt of, but Naruto was skeptical when he read that. He might get to see it for himself now. A growl sounded from the cage, sending a breath of hot air in Naruto's face. Naruto stilled himself. In spite of the cage separating him from the beast within, an enormous red eye opened, causing Naruto to tense up. The eye looked at him, as if evaluating him. Then, the eye started to rise, causing Naruto to look up at the massive form. The Kyuubi had orange silky fur, with black markings around his eyes, connected to his, funnily enough, rabbit-like ears. The upper body was humanoid, including the hands. The lower body was just like a fox, barring the 9 long swaying tails on the back. Fire was the closest thing they looked like. The red-slitted eyes looked him closely with a hint of malice. Naruto spoke first. "Thank you for answering my call, Kyuubi," he said with a nod. If the Kyuubi was surprised, he didn't show it. Inside, however, he was mighty shocked. This was not the first thing he expected his jailer to say. He expected him to look at him with fear, asking whether he was really the Kyuubi, following with the denial of the possibility. He didn't expect him to thank him at all. Oh, yikes. Tired eyes, guys, Zoom calls all day. Sidetracked. Let me get back into it. He replied, "Think nothing of it. I'm surprised, though, that you were able to figure it out so quickly. Why aren't you surprised?" He asked with curiosity. Naruto sat down in front of the cage, which surprised the Biju further. Naruto was showing that he was willing to relax in front of him. "Well, for a few moments I was, but it wasn't that difficult to figure out. It was easy to create a plausible theory once you have had all relevant facts," he said, never breaking eye contact with the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi raised a massive eyebrow, silently impressed with his host. His thought process was very intelligent for someone who was only 5 years old. He was bold as well, bold enough to maintain eye contact with him. He also could not sense any fear from the boy. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" he asked. Without a moment hesitation, Naruto answered, Because you're misunderstood." That was hesitation, but maybe. This time, surprise was visible on the Kyuubi's face, which was quickly followed by anger. "What did you just say? Choose your next words very carefully," he growled. Naruto wasted no time in answering. In all the books I have read, they describe you as a being of pure hatred, but that is only one-sided misunderstanding, isn't it?" he asked with a sad smile. Before the Kyuubi could answer, Naruto considered. "Humans fear what they can't understand. The foremost aspect of your personality that they have seen is hatred, which, while a big part of you, conceals a being underneath that can feel emotions just like us. Isn't that right, QB? Bro, he is 5. Hey, I didn't write it. QB was astounded at the amount of understanding his host showed towards him. Perhaps he could. What do you want? Naruto looked at him with his azure eyes, reminding the QB of another set of blues that looked at him fearlessly before sealing him. If you wouldn't mind, a hesitant smile appeared on Naruto's face. Would you be my friend? The QB was truly stupefied at the request. For the first time in centuries of his existence, someone had asked if they could be his friend. Naruto saw the QB's surprise, and for the QB, if Naruto's request was not surprising enough, he was totally blown away by what Naruto did next. Naruto got up from his spot and walked into the cage. He walked up close and offered a hand for him to take. My name's Naruto Uzumaki. It's nice to meet you. The QB had abandoned all sign of remaining composed and was openly gaping at Naruto, but he composed himself quickly and gave a sincere smile to Naruto. Seeing Naruto was too small to even shake his finger, he extended his index nail to him. My name is Kurama. Nice to meet you. Naruto smiled. You have a very nice name, Kurama. The newly dubbed Kurama smiled. Thank you. It means a lot coming from someone whose name means fish cake. Kurama smirked at the end, intentionally making the jab at Naruto's name to see if he could rile the boy up. His success was only minuscule, though. Naruto only had a tiny frown on his face, instead of a full-blown childish rage, which Kurama was expecting. Actually, I prefer the other meaning of my name, Maelstrom. It is much better than being compared to a fish cake, Kurama. Kurama chuckled, a smooth, deep baritone that lit up a warm feeling inside Naruto. Naruto decided he liked Kurama's voice. No one would think of a maelstrom when they look at you, Naruto. Perhaps when you were older, but certainly not now, Kurama teased. Naruto shrugged and then his eyes turned serious, making Kurama do the same. Naruto asked the Biju, Kurama, you know I have questions, right? Kurama nodded. I assumed as much. However, I had expected us to meet when you were significantly older. I have to say I was not expecting your call to me. Naruto shook his head. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I was not expecting you to pull me inside my mind, he said absently, noting that he was not wet at all in spite of standing and sitting in the water. Kurama returned to his earlier position, lying down, face on his paws and hands. I will do my best to answer whatever questions you have, Naruto, he assured him. Naruto gave a nod of gratitude and sat down as well. Okay, first question. Why does my mindscape represent a gutter or a sewer? Whatever you want to call it. Kurama looked for a moment, after which a mischievous grin broke out on his face, exposing his sharp canines. You know what they say about people whose minds are in the gutter, right? Naruto gave him a blank look, reminding Kurama that Naruto, however intelligent for his age, was still only 5. Kurama's embarrassed blush would have been visible on his face if his fur were not orange. He cleared his throat loudly to avoid embarrassment. Sorry, Naruto, but I have no idea why your mindscape is a sewer. There is a theory that says that your mindscape is a reflection of your mental state. It could have been the psychological trauma that was given to you by the villagers, but why it is particularly a sewer, I do not know, he replied. Naruto absorbed the information like a sponge, and after a few seconds he asked, So, I have psychological trauma? I knew about that. Which means that even if I change the appearance of my mindscape to something else, there will always be something that represents the trauma, right? Kurama inclined his head in agreement, smiling a little. That's right. I have to say, though, it's nice to talk to someone who's intelligent. Naruto's eyes visibly brightened up at the praise, giving a full-blown smile to his newest friend. Kurama noted with some amusement the grin looked very similar to his own and a redhead. Naruto jumped to his feet. Your answer just confirmed something for me, Kurama. His eyes had a mix of excitement and determination to him, as if he was about to do something new. Naruto closed his eyes, clapped his hands together, face scrunched up in concentration. Kurama observed him quietly, wondering what his host was about to do. Naruto snapped his fingers snapped his eyes open after a few minutes, having envisioned what he was about to do. With a cry of "Ha!" he slammed his right hand on the ground. What happened next completely blew away his mind. A wave of energy exploded from Naruto in all directions, completely lighting up the mindscape and almost blinding Kurama. Was it chakra that exploded from him? How is it even possible when he hasn't unlocked it yet? That pulse of chakra completely shredded everything it came in contact with. Naruto may have possibly destroyed his own mind, were the thoughts running through Kurama's head. When his eyes opened, however, he was stupefied to a degree he didn't think was possible. His eyes were wide, his jaw was hanging, making him look quite comical. A beautiful valley greeted his eyes, grounds that were lush and a shade of green that looked heavenly. Streams with water clearer than he had ever seen. The grass felt soft under his limbs, and there was a massive oak tree with a shade that made it great for naps. The cage around him had disappeared, instead replaced with a collar which had the same piece of paper from the floor with the kanji for seal written on it. He looked at Naruto and wondered. This kid was a package of one surprise after another. Naruto got up from his position. Looking nowhere for where, he smiled satisfactorily. That is so much better than before. Wouldn't you agree, Kurama? He asked, turning to him. Kurama was smiling like the happiest being on earth. No one had ever done anything for him, and Naruto, who had just met him, had already done so much for him. Oh, my bad, man. We recorded this at like 12 o'clock, so... But I guess you don't care. My bad. Kurama looked at Naruto with gratitude in his eyes. Thank you, Naruto. You have no idea how much this means to me. Naruto just shook his head. Don't worry about it. We're friends, right? Kurama nodded, feeling excitement in a long time. What? Wanting to explore what Naruto had created for him, he was about to leave when Naruto's voice stopped him mid-step. However, it's strange that there is no presence of a celestial body in the sky. I'd envisioned it just like outside. He mused, a frown on his face that would have earned him so many squeals of kawaii from girls. Kurama too wondered what the reason could be and quickly figured it out. He looked and thought, perhaps it is because of the seal, he muttered. He looked up at Naruto. Naruto looked up at him, confusion written on his face. What do you mean? Kurama looked down at Naruto. The seal that keeps you inside me, Naruto. Or that keeps me inside you, Naruto. If it was only you, you would have an absolute control over your mindscape. But since I am here as well, the control gets divided equally. However, control on my side is restricted because of this seal. The absence of the sun or the moon that you envision could signify that this place is cut off from my senses. In easier terms, the outside world. He explained. Naruto processed Kurama's answer. If the seal was restricting Kurama's activities, what do you propose I should do, Kurama? Kurama put his hand under his chin. He could see only one way around this, and if Naruto messed up, it could spell trouble for the both of them. But he would try his best to not let that happen. You would have to tear off a small piece of paper on the collar. Leave the rest to me, Kurama assured him. When Naruto looked a bit hesitant, Kurama told him, Don't worry, Naruto. You can do it. If something goes wrong, I will take care of it. The reassurance eased any doubts from Naruto's face, and he promptly marched up to Kurama's collar, making sure to tear only the smallest piece of paper. Kurama nodded in satisfaction and approval. He could feel a tiny bit of control get back to him. Just a snap of his fingers, and the sun appeared in the sky, lighting up the valley, making it even more beautiful. Naruto smiled at the sight, but it faded at the sight of a cave that he instinctively knew not to go near. He turned back to Kurama, who had an expression of curiosity on his face. Naruto, what was that wave of energy that exploded from you earlier? And how did you know to change your mindscape? My bad, I'm moving shit. Naruto gave him an innocent look. It is my mind, Kurama. I can make anything happen in here. As for the energy wave, his expression turned sheepish, and he rubbed the back of his head, reminding him of the boy's mother who had the same habit. It just seemed cooler than simply changing the surroundings in a blink of an eye. This time it was Kurama who gave a blank look. A sweat drop appeared on the side of his head at the sheepish laugh of his host. He shook his head. It seemed Naruto liked to be a dramatic smartass. He concentrated and nodded in satisfaction. He could now sense chakra signatures of almost the whole village. Once Naruto opened his eyes, Kurama would be able to see as well. Nevertheless, you have my thanks. Allow me to repay you with something that will come in very handy once you are a shinobi. Kurama smiled, raising a fingernail and very gently touching Naruto's forehead. The nail shined for a moment and then faded back. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What was that? Kurama smiled mysteriously. Why don't you discover it yourself? I can feel several chakra signatures closing in on you. Time for you to open your eyes, Naruto. Naruto nodded and turned to leave, but froze. He slowly turned around and smiled embarrassedly. How do I leave? Kurama had to squash the urge to facepalm. It seemed that Naruto had his moments of stupidity every now and then. Just jump in the water, Fishcake, he said exasperatedly. Naruto frowned at Fishcake, but nodded, and with a leap that was impossible for a child his age, he jumped into the water. Kurama shook his head, amused. It was only because Naruto was his own mind that he was able to do so. Perhaps I should have told him that he could get out with just a thought, he mused. Then he removed that thought immediately. Nah, it's too much fun messing with him. Alright, so Naruto opened his eyes slowly without a hurry. He was thinking about what gift did Kurama give to him. When he felt it, like something. Someone was coming his way. He slowly turned his head around, face paling at the sight. Dozens of people, clubs, knives, crowbars in hands, excited expressions on their face, shouting, Today is the day you die, demon. We will finish what the Yondaime started, and we will avenge him. Naruto's expression had turned utterly horrified. There was only one way to get off the monument without falling splat on the pavement. Outrun and outmaneuver the mob. He wasted no time. He skipped up to his feet and immediately started running in a perpendicular direction to the mob. Since he had been running regularly for a year, he had built up some pretty good speed and endurance. His plan was to take a wide arc around the mob, and as soon as it was behind him, hightail it to the streets where he could lose him. He took off into the forest, the mob following closely behind. As he began to cut around the mob, hairs on the back of his neck stood up, a clear sign of danger. However, unlike before, when he could only detect danger, this time he could feel the direction of the weapons. Naruto was an imaginative child. From where he had developed his imagination, no one knew. But there was one thing about his imagination that even he knew was not normal. His body had the most unnatural, peculiar ability of following the commands of his mind down to a T. As soon as he sensed the knife speeding at him, he thought of only one escape scenario, and his body followed it as it did before several times. Just not in a life and death scenario. He jumped, body in air, rotating like a screwdriver. The knives going under him, missing him just by a few inches. He rolled on the ground to soften his landing and continued running away, successfully getting the mob behind him and the road in front of him. He managed to get to the streets, where he purposefully chose the market where he could lose them. He knew the civilians could not do the tricks that he could. He vaulted neatly over several carts without losing momentum, each time increasing the gap between him and the mob. He turned left at an intersection and jumped up a wall, hanging on the other side until he was sure the sounds of the mob faded away. He jumped back on the road. He took a moment to catch a breath. If he was not mistaken, he had run at full speed for close to 3 miles. Impressive for a 5-year-old. The familiar voice of Kurama sounded in his head. Naruto looked surprised for a moment, but then shook his head. It was probably because of the change that he had done to the seal. He also chalked it up to the adrenaline that he had run so far and fast. That was a lot more difficult than he had imagined, but he blamed it on his clothes. An orange jumpsuit stuck out like a sore thumb among the masses. It was as if he had stuck a piece of paper behind his back saying, "Kill me," to a blonde hair. The blonde hair wasn't helping either. But then again, he had nothing else to wear. The keepers at the orphanage looked very satisfied when they had given him this jumpsuit. They probably wanted him to be spotted in case he attempted to hide from the mob. Too bad they underestimated him. So deep he was in his musings that he didn't notice he had entered an area of Konoha no one had taken a stroll in for at least 5 years. He looked when he saw he was standing before the gate of a beautiful mansion. "Naruto, Open the gates of the mansion. Let's explore. Kurama's excited voice sounded in his head. Naruto shook his head. I would be an idiot to even touch the gate. Can't you see all the seals engraved on it? Kurama insisted. Do it. Who knows? You might get a surprise. Naruto frowned at the behavior of the fox, but followed his advice anyway. He placed his hands on the seal of the gate and closed his eyes, as if waiting to be blown up. He didn't notice the seals glow slightly. He opened his eyes when nothing happened. Tentatively, he pushed the gate, and to his surprise, it opened easily. The seals must be malfunctioning if a stranger like me could enter in here, he thought. The mansion was beautiful. It was a traditional two-story mansion, surrounded by lush green grounds. There was even a small pond with clear water in front of the house. Whoever this house belongs to must be insanely wealthy, he thought with wonder. Money was something that was rarely available to him. He decided not to dwell on it further. As he approached the front door, he began to think it was a bad idea coming here. What if someone spotted him? What if he accidentally activated a trap? He cautiously turned the doorknob, hearing it click. He opened the door fully, seeing the dark living room with a sofa and comfortable chairs. He turned on the light, surprised that electricity still flowed in the circuits of the house, but it was all covered in a thick layer of dust. The owner has been gone for a long time, but why? He wondered. As he turned in the direction of the fireplace, he stopped short of what he saw. The first thing that caught his eye was the uniquely shaped kunai embedded in a stone slab at the top of the fireplace. Every shinobi or to-be shinobi worth his or her salt would recognize the tri-pronged kunai. It was the Yondaime's kunai. He knew not that this house belonged to a deceased Hokage. Crap. He had just broken into the Yondaime's house. Double crap. He was just about to turn tail when Kurama's voice sounded in his head. What's that? He turned around again, seeing the portrait above the fireplace for the first time. It was Minato Namikaze, decked out in a full Hokage uniform, along with a beautiful redhead wearing a high-colored sleeveless blouse under a long, loose-fitting dress with a wristband on her left wrist, and shinobi sandals. A medium-sized bulge on her stomach made him realize that she was pregnant, but that was not what caught her eye. The redhead was waving a peace sign with a very familiar grin, the same one he wore whenever his mischievous tendencies surfaced or when he was really happy. Her face was also very similarly looking to his own. Her exquisite violet eyes were shaped just like his. With a jolt, the puzzle pieces that he could never solve arranged themselves, forming a long sought-after answer. Blonde hair, azure eyes, the familiar grin, same shaped face, identically shaped eyes. He had just found the identities of his parents. Congratulations, kid. You finally found them. Kurama's soothed voice was softer this time. Naruto stood in front of the fireplace, eyes glued to the portrait, a storm of emotions raging inside of him. He didn't know what to feel, whether to be happy that he finally has found out who his parents are, or were, he thought bitterly, or whether to feel hurt that his Gigi hid his parents' identity from him, or whether to feel furious at the treatment from the village. His hands were clenched so tight that his knuckles turned white. Kurama consoled him. It's okay to feel this way, Naruto. Anyone who would have been in your shoes would have felt the same. Naruto finally sat down in Indian position, the energy leaving his legs. He tried to think something, but the thoughts evaded him. Only the images of his parents situated in his mind. He was finally with his parents, yet at the same time he was not. Tears finally fell from his eyes from holding them back for so long. He cried for a long time, letting his emotions have an outlet. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was alone in the world. Sniffling, he asked inside his head, Kurama, did you know about this? Kurama remained silent for a few moments, which were enough for Naruto to deduce that he knew. Kurama knew and he still didn't tell him anything. I did know, Naruto. After all, you shared the same space with me for 9 months inside your mother, the fox replied softly. Naruto cried even harder after hearing this. It was like a whole new storm colliding with a storm that was already raging inside him. On one hand, he was happy that he and Kurama were together even before he came into this world. On the other hand, he felt betrayed that Kurama would hide something like this from him. He was too emotional to make sense of Kurama's statements right now. He felt really lonely. After he finally stopped crying, he stood up, too tired to explore the house right now. Hell, he was too tired to even form a coherent thought. Somehow, he climbed the stairs, opened the first door that was in front of him, and fell onto the bed, asleep before hitting the soft mattress. Hiruzen was panicking. He knew what the day was and had wanted to get out of the office to spend time with his surrogate grandson, but fate seemed to have other plans for him, as instead of having the normal amount, 3 stacks of paperwork in front of him, he was literally buried in paperwork. He assigned 2 of his Anbu, Parrot and Ox, to keep an eye on Naruto. Sadly, he didn't know and was aware that the 2 Anbu were firmly against the demon boy. He didn't know that they were the ones who gave the mob directions to where Naruto was in the evening. It was only when they came to report that he found the truth. The 2 Anbu appeared in his office and knelt down in front of him. "Report!" he ordered. Parrot was the first to speak. "We lost the boy, Hokage-sama, because today is the Kyuubi festival. Crowds were thick, and that is where we lost him in." Unfortunately for the 2, Hiruzen didn't believe them for a second. If not for the seriousness the situation demanded, he would have laughed out loud that a 5-year-old was able to lose him in the crowd. Anbu were specifically trained for this scenario. Secondly, he had caught both of the slips of tongue. Demon and it were not hard to deduce. Hiruzen rarely felt anger. In fact, he rarely found the reason to get angry. Even Danzo could only get a small amount of irritation out of him. But right now, he was past irritated. He was downright furious. All the Anbu in the room felt it. The ridiculous amount of killing intent that was coming from the Hokage. "Shit," both the Anbu thought. "Cat! Bear!" he shouted. In an instant, the 2 Anbu were kneeling in front of the Hokage, just behind Parrot and Ox. "Orders, Hokage-sama!" Hiruzen barked out. "Take these 2 to Ibiki. Tell them to hold nothing back and find out what they were doing this evening. Also, tell Inoichi that I want to know every face that was in the mob." "Hi, Hokage-sama." The 2 Anbu instantly caught the traitorous Anbus and promptly flickered out. Body flickered. Calm down. Now that he was somewhat calm, the previous panic returned. Where was Naruto? Was he injured? Worse, was he dead? Was he even in the village? He took out his ball that he used to keep tabs on the village occasionally. Mostly he used it to ensure whether Naruto was alright or not. He channeled his chakra through the ball, searching for Naruto. However, he was floored when nothing came up. He repeated his search 2 more times just to be sure. The result remained the same. He did not like where this was going. It was a strong possibility that Naruto was inside the village walls. "Dog! Tiger!" he called out. In an instant, the mentioned 2 were before him. "Track him down no matter what. Even search outside the village if you have to." "Hi, Hokage-sama." They flickered out. Hiruzen sat down with a heavy sigh. He was mentally exhausted from the paperwork he had been doing all damn day, and then this. "Where are you, Naruto-kun?" He decided to sleep in his office and wait for them to come back, trusting his Anbu. Where are we at? The sun's rays peeked from in between the curtains, falling straight onto Naruto's face. Blearily, he opened his eyes. Although he slept peacefully last night, he was mentally and emotionally exhausted. This type of exhaustion was new to him, having never experienced it before. At first, he had no idea where he was, but then last night's memories came back to him. He viciously fought back the tears that threatened to fall out again. "No, I will not cry again. I did enough of that last night," he reminded himself. It was time, he decided, to think through this logically. First things first, morning rituals. He got up from the bed and headed to the bathroom. Surprisingly, it was clean and dust-free compared to the rest of the house. Weird, he thought, before closing the door. Second, he needed to get out of here and meet his Gigi. He had no desire to meet that man now, but the man had looked after him like his own. He was there for him when no one was. He was probably worried sick. Although he was dying to explore the house, it was best not to worry the old man even more. Besides, the faster he could get this over with, the quicker he could return here to explore. Besides, who knows, maybe his parents left something for him. As soon as he closed the gate behind him, he was surprised to see the seals on the gate glow a bit before the gate locked itself. They weren't malfunctioning. The seals recognized my chakra, which is why I was able to get in, he thought in awe. He had read that the Yondaime was regarded as a seal master of the highest caliber. but seeing it with his own eyes was entirely different. Sensing his chakra signature when he hadn't even unlocked his chakra, his father was awesome. That decided for him, if his father could do fleeing jutsu like this, he will too, and he would do better than him. He then turned to leave when a thought struck him. He was about to dwell on it, but he roughly shook himself out of it. I don't have time. I have to meet Gigi. With that, he ran out of the area, picking up speed when he realized he was quite far from the Hokage Tower. En route, he mentally nudged his friend. Hey, Kurama, you awake right now? For a few seconds, he heard nothing. Then he heard a yawn in his head, almost making him do the same before he viciously squashed the urge. What's up, Naruto? Naruto faltered in his running, almost falling flat on his face. He couldn't help the grin that came on his face, hearing Kurama, an ancient demon using the slang that kids his age do, was hilarious. A stray thought from last night's conversation with Kurama. About last night, what did you mean when you said that we shared the same space for 9 months inside my mother? He asked curiously, turning serious once more. Kurama replied, I meant what I said, Naruto. You were smart enough to figure that answer out for yourself. Naruto's expression turned grim at that. It meant he and his mother were exactly the same, host of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. But why was his mother Jinchuriki? Kurama interpreted his thoughts. Naruto blinked at that. What? Kurama elaborated. Jinchuriki is the term that you are looking for. It means power of the human sacrifice. They are humans who have a tailed beast sealed inside of them. Naruto did not falter. Naruto did not falter even for a second after this revelation. He was almost halfway to the tower, which means he could learn a little more. I get what you mean. What I don't understand is why my mother was a Jinchuriki before me. Also, what is my mother's name? Why was I made into one? Questions were coming one after the other like water running from a tap. Kurama raised his eyebrows at the onslaught of questions. Whoa. Oh, McNuggets. Whoa. Slow down, Naruto. You have to understand that I cannot answer all your questions. Naruto was a little peeved at that. Why not? Kurama simply shrugged at that, acting as if he didn't even notice Naruto's anger. Because there is an old man who can answer these questions better than I can. Naruto calmed down at that. Kurama was right. He had no hand in who he was sealed. Gigi was the Hokage. He was the one who probably knew more about these matters. Another thought struck him, but the tower was within sight now. Better make this fast, he mused. Hey Kurama, what was that you gave me last night as a gift, he asked. He could see Kurama grin in his mindscape. I'm surprised you could pick up on that. The fact that you unintentionally used it is even more impressive. Naruto scowled a little. Stop beating around the bush, Kurama. Just tell me. Kurama, however, did not budge. Don't tell me you can figure it out, Naruto. You may not know, but I can feel how close you are to figuring it out. Naruto was slowly getting irritated with the games of riddles that Kurama was deliberately dragging on. He was about to give him a mental scar to remember when he suddenly figured it out. He had actually felt the mob approaching. Did you actually give me a sensory ability? Kurama shrugged. Naruto mentally whooped. Thank you so much, Kurama. Secondly, his tone turned menacing, causing Kurama to lift an eyebrow. This is for annoying me with riddles. With that, he turned his entire mindscape orange. He would cherish Kurama's yells of horror forever. He reached the Hokage Tower. Panting only lightly, standing in front of the tower, he felt a little anxiety creeping up inside him. He faced the sky. What time is it, Kurama? Observing the position of the sun, it should be around 6 in the morning, he deduced. Naruto idly questioned himself. Would Gigi even be awake at this hour? He shook his head. He would not back down now. He steeled himself and entered the tower. Seeing almost no one in the corridors, he almost turned back, but resolutely thought to himself that he would wait for him. He arrived in front of the Hokage's office. Seeing the absence of the secretary, he knew was supposed to be here. He sat on the bench outside the office. This was his first time in the Hokage Tower, so he decided to look around. But there was not much to look around. All the important stuff must be placed somewhere where only authorized people could access it, he assumed. Sighing, he closed his eyes, figuring he could talk to Kurama about his newly acquired sensory abilities. Oh my gosh, why? Kurama, how could I sense the mob before when I haven't even unlocked my chakra? Kurama thought about it a bit, then answered. He had nothing else to do anyways. Good observation, Naruto. It is simple. It was a newly awakened ability. Naturally, it would require time before it stabilizes, but before that happens, it is unstable for a little while. It was in that time period that you could sense the mob. If you were to try it now, you won't be able to use it, he explained, keeping it simple so Naruto can understand it. After hearing Kurama's explanation, Naruto concluded that the ability Kurama had given him was a chakra-dependent ability. He could only use it as long as he infused chakra. That too in a specific way, so that he could sense. I got it right. Damn, that means I have to first unlock my chakra, he pouted. Kurama spoke again. Before I forget, I did something as well. Sensory ability was not the only thing I gave you. Naruto rose an eyebrow in confusion. Now that he thought about it, not many kids his age could do that. What do you mean? Kurama expanded on his statement. I tweaked your ability to sense danger as well. Naruto nodded. I noticed that. Kurama's grin became sly. Then did you also notice that when your danger sense activated, your surroundings seemed to slow down? Naruto froze. Did that really happen? He thought back to the events of last night, specifically when he avoided the knives that were about to skewer him. He did remember seeing the knives coming in a sort of slow motion. Damn. He mentally whistled. Holy shit, you're right. I remember that. How is that possible anyways? This ability would be so useful in the future. Kurama shrugged. It was my way of thanking you for what you did for me last night. Naruto deliberated on whether to try and unlock his chakra right now or to wait to enter the academy and then unlock it. So deep he was in thought, he did not notice the Hokage coming his way. Yo, give me a second. Let me get a sip of water, please. Alright, let's continue. Hiruzen had a restless night. The aged Hokage's worry increased when Dog and Tiger came back after a search that lasted 4 hours. They reported that they searched every corner of the village, every possible place where Naruto might be, but found nothing. Hiruzen then dismissed them and headed back to his home, turning in for a sleepless and worrisome night. When he got up in the morning, his first thought was about whether Naruto was alive or not. He immediately got up, shaking off the morning drowsiness like a seasoned veteran. He quickly got dressed and used the body flicker to get to the Hokage Tower. He quickly climbed the stairs that led to his office, intent on resuming the search for Naruto as soon as possible. He froze in his tracks, however, when he saw a familiar orange jumpsuit-wearing kid deep in his thought, which was not unusual for him. Naruto! His exclamation was filled with relief and happiness. Naruto looked up, and Hiruzen knew something was wrong when instead of seeing the usual face-splitting grin, he was greeted with a small smile filled with sadness? Nevertheless, he grabbed the boy into a bear hug, which Naruto did not hesitate to reciprocate. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Where were you last night? The questions rushed out like water breaking from a dam. He felt tons lighter than he did last night. Naruto gave him a small smile and said, somewhat GG, and as for the second question, I need to talk to you in private. Relieved but his confusion growing, he ushered the boy in his office. Naruto's keen eyes scanned the office looking for places where shinobi might be hidden. The Hokage couldn't be without bodyguards after all. The upper 4 corners of the room, that's where they're hidden. Kurama supplied helpfully. Oh, wrong voice. Let's continue. Naruto gave him a nod of thanks, then turned his attention to the aging Hokage. So Naruto, what did you want to talk about? Naruto debated whether to tell the old man to make his Anbu leave, but decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I know who my parents are. That simple statement changed the entire atmosphere of the office. Hiruzen tensed up, and so did the Anbu in the office. To those who were intelligent, it was quite easy to deduce whose son Naruto Uzumaki was. My bad. Fortunately or unfortunately, those were very few. However, Naruto's file itself was classified with no one but only the Hokage had access to it. to find out that Naruto knew about something that only the Hokage had access to was unexpected. Hiruzen wasted no time. Waving hand seals, the Anbu recognized the order to leave them alone. They vanished, and Hiruzen activated the privacy seals in the office. He gave his complete attention to Naruto. And who were they? Naruto was unnerved by the caution in the old man's eyes, but steeled himself and answered, the Yondaime Hokage and his wife. Hiruzen closed his eyes and accepted his resignation. He always knew Naruto would find out, but he just never expected it to happen so soon. He opened his eyes to find himself on the receiving end of Naruto's accusing stare. Why did you pretend you didn't know, Gigi? Hiruzen barely caught himself from flinching. He gave a sigh. Who told you? Naruto promptly answered back, I figured it out myself. How? The curiosity was killing him. He had to know if someone was out there wielding such dangerous information. Naruto recounted the events of last night, and at the end of his explanation, Hiruzen was both relieved and curious. Relieved because he was glad that no one besides Naruto and him knew his parents' identity, and curious because he never knew that Minato had found a way to hide from his peeping ball. What? Bruh. I digress. Both him and Naruto sat in silence for a while. Naruto was the one to break it first, hurt in his voice. Gigi, why did you not tell me? Hiruzen responded, weariness coloring his tone. Naruto, you have to understand that your father had many enemies. I could not afford to take the chance that you wouldn't blurt it out accidentally. Anger filled Naruto. Do you have any idea how desperate I was for answers? He whispered, but the anger in his voice was as clear as the sky. Guilt hit the Hokage with the force of Guy's fist. He could honestly not relate to Naruto's situation. Do you know? Naruto's voice was a little bit louder this time. How it broke me not to know the identity of my own parents? He was shouting at the end. I have the right to know that information more than any other person in the world. Tears were freely flowing down Naruto's face by now. Hiruzen himself was shedding tears of his own. Naruto was right in that account. He had a right to know who the people were who brought him into the world, more so than anyone. But as the Hokage, his decision had to be logical. Sentiment could not be afforded by somebody of his position. Naruto had calmed down after a few minutes. I have a question, Gigi, and I want an honest answer. He was glaring at the Hokage by now. Hiruzen wiped his own tears and answered, I will do my best. Naruto was looking at his feet. Did they love me? Hiruzen smiled this time nostalgically. Naruto, you were their world even before you were born. Naruto felt as if a weight had been taken off his shoulders. He had wanted to know if his parents loved him. What child didn't? Did they leave something for me? That question caught Hiruzen off guard. However, he was able to recover quickly. Yes they did, but I don't know where. Naruto leaned back in his seat, eyes on the ceiling, thinking, if it was in this office, Gigi would know, which means it's probably in his house. Kurama, do you know by any chance? He decided to ask the fox. Damn, I was hoping to watch you scuttle around for answers. It was entertaining. Kurama grumbled. Naruto mentally raised an eyebrow. So you do know? Yes, in fact, it is the place where everyone would least suspect, answered Kurama. Naruto waited for more, but it never came. He mentally huffed. Fine, I'll do it myself. And just for leaving me in suspense, he changed his mindscape to orange again. Kurama's howls were somehow louder than before. In a place where everyone would least suspect, answered Kurama. Oh, wait. I reread something. 1 second. Alright, there we go. In a place where everyone would least expect. Where could that be? From what is written in the books, Dad was a very humble man, but the size of his house implies he liked to live in comfort. Since he was a seal master, a study where he did his work would also be there. But he would place seals all over it to be safe. Everyone would expect him to keep important stuff in his study. Locked tight, he thought. Like lightning. The answer came then, causing his eyes to widen slightly. Seals can be broken if someone is skilled enough, but no one expects to find treasure buried right under their nose, which means it isn't the study, it's right in front of me. The image of his parents' portrait came into mind. He stood up from the chair with sudden force that it was knocked backwards. "I know where it is!" Hiruzen jumped up at the shout, eyes wide. "No what, Naruto?" But Naruto was already running towards the window. Hiruzen hurriedly deactivated the privacy seals just in time. Naruto opened the window and jumped onto the slope of the Hokage Tower. His speed easily carried him towards the edge of the slope. He executed a perfect cartwheel on the edge, his hands holding on and his legs going over the arc, onto the wall, and then released his hold, falling towards the ground. He rolled perfectly to soften his landing, and then ran full throttle back to the house of his parents. Hiruzen had gone pale as soon as he saw Naruto cartwheeling over the edge and letting go. However, panic gave way to relief when he saw Naruto had landed perfectly and was running away. "That boy will send me to an early grave," he thought, as he prepared to follow. He gave the order to stand by to his Anbu as he darted after Naruto. He had to admit, for his age, Naruto was unusually fast. He easily caught up to Naruto, however, who was easily ignoring the stares around him. Hiruzen asked the excited boy, "Naruto, do you mind if I take us there quicker? I know where you are going." Naruto glanced at him and said, "Then pick me up and do it!" Hiruzen nodded as he did just that and vanished in a body flicker. The villagers thought the Hokage was chasing the demon boy to kill him, and when they saw him pick it up and vanish, they smiled. Everyone continued about their business, not suspecting a thing. Villagers at Konoha are idiots anyways. We almost at the end, boys and girls. Both the Hokage and Naruto stood in front of his parents' portrait. Naruto spoke without removing his eyes. "I forgot to ask in excitement, Gigi. What was my mother's name?" Though he asked just that, Hiruzen thought it was better to tell him her story now rather than later. "Her name was Kushina Uzumaki. She was a woman who was fearless, blunt, brash, and one of the most amazing people I ever knew. She was a deadly kunoichi as well. It is her name that you carry, Naruto," he said nostalgically. Naruto was amazed that his mother was so lovely, beautiful, as well as deadly. Naruto mentally applauded his father for landing such a catch and promised to do the same. She was from... What the hell? How do you pronounce that? Uzushio Gakure? She was from Uzushio Gakure, I think. The land of whirlpools. The Uzumakis were distant relatives of the Senju clan. The clan of the Shodai and Nidaime? How do you pronounce that? Hokage. They were feared for their Fuinjutsu skills. They were the undisputed master of the art. It was your mother who taught your father Fuinjutsu. They had immensely dense and large chakra reserves, which gave them a longer life than any other ninja. Some of them had special chakra, which they could physically manifest in the form of chains. Your mother was one of them, he recalled, with Naruto soaking it all up, like a little child hearing stories from his parents. Hearing how powerful his mother's clan, and by extension his mother was in Fuinjutsu, his resolve to master it only strengthened. He wanted to ask him why she was made the Jinchuriki Kurama, but let it go. He could always ask another day. He turned his attention back to the portrait. He could not find any seals, but given his parents' skills in Fuinjutsu, they could have made a seal that hid all other seals. How do we go about this, Gigi? He turned his attention back. Hiruzen pinched his chin and thought. There was a high possibility that the portrait only required Naruto's blood to open. Letters from parents were only meant to be read by family, after all. You have to apply a little bit of blood on the portrait, Naruto. If something such as letters from your parents are there, Minato would trust no one but his blood to read them. He took out a kunai and silently asked Naruto to slice his hand. Oh my gosh. Naruto gave him his hand without protest. Quickly and efficiently, Hiruzen sliced Naruto's thumb, opening a small cut. Naruto, knowing his fast healing would seal it within seconds, instantly wiped his thumb on the painting before it closed. For a second, nothing happened. Naruto and Hiruzen thought that they might have been wrong, but then the whole frame of the painting lit up, showing intricate seals that only an Uzumaki or Minato would have hoped to understand. There was a small click, and the portrait pushed out a little bit. Naruto, more eager than he had ever been in his life, opened the portrait. Inside there was something very unexpected. Naruto and Hiruzen stared in bewilderment at what met their eyes. There were only 2 envelopes that were there. Naruto was a bit disappointed that there was only 2 envelopes remaining of his parents' legacy, but changed the direction of his thoughts immediately. He was taking something at face value, which he would never do. Perhaps it's the feelings I experienced last night. Emotions are clouding my judgment, he thought. Don't worry about it, Naruto. Feelings and thoughts such as those never truly fade away. You just learn to live with them. Besides, it happens to the best of them, Kurama reassured. Naruto noticed how Kurama excluded himself from the best of them and rose an eyebrow mentally. It does not happen to you? Kurama arrogantly puffed out his chest and declared, Of course not! I'm the Kyuubi no Kitsune, boy. A being such as I am above such petty things. Naruto ignored the pompous rambling of the fox and turned his attention back to the envelopes. He quickly took them from their place and checked carefully if there was anything left. Seeing he had taken all that there was, he closed the portrait. The seals glowed again, signifying the portrait had been locked back. A sudden thought struck Hiruzen, and he had to resist the urge to smack his forehead for what he was about to do. Why didn't I ask this earlier? Damn the forgetfulness that comes with this age. Hiruzen felt really bad, but he had to do this right now. Tentatively, he placed his hands on Naruto's shoulder, knocking the boy out of his trance. He was gazing at the envelopes as if they were the most precious things in the world, which they were. Naruto-kun, why weren't you at your room in the orphanage yesterday in the evening? He asked slowly, as if afraid to find out the answer to that question. Naruto could not help the flinch that the question brought, but he had told Gigi about how he found out his parents' identity last night. He had conveniently forgot to mention that he'd been kicked out by the orphanage. He had hoped that Gigi would not ask him about that. In a mumble that Hiruzen barely understood, the blonde said, The matron kicked me out yesterday evening. Hiruzen suspected that the matron would have deliberately kept Naruto out of the orphanage last night because of the festival, but did not expect him to be thrown out of the orphanage. White-hot anger flooded his veins that he barely restrained from letting it out as killer intent. How dare they? How dare that stupid woman do such a vile thing? Throwing a 5-year-old out, knowing he would be killed. Why is the civilian population of this village so stupid? It's like they don't trust Minato's skills at all. He raged inside his mind. However, he knew he was equally at fault. He should have never announced Naruto's status as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi at all. Naruto would have lived comfortably without experiencing the hatred of the villagers. Naruto watched his Gigi's face carefully for any sign of anger. Fortunately, years of being a shinobi and Hokage allowed Hiruzen to keep a neutral face, but Naruto could tell the subconscious tightening of Gigi's hand on his shoulder that he was angry. I see, was all he said before visibly collecting himself. Now to address the main issue. He looked at Naruto with a grave look on his face. Naruto, now that is out of the way, we have to find a new place for you to live. The words were out of his mouth before he could stop them. Not another orphanage, Gigi! Hiruzen stared at the desperate look Naruto was giving him. To be honest, he was scared that one day it would come to this. And surprisingly, he agreed with Naruto. He did not want Naruto to live anywhere he would be hated. Unfortunately, that left only one option. Naruto, that means you have to live alone, he said, silently wishing he could take the boy in himself. Unfortunately, he could not. That dreaded civilian council was in his way. Naruto crossed his hands over his chest defensively, not hesitating for a moment to answer. Better than living in some place where I'm treated with bias. He was looking at Hiruzen, chin tilted upwards, in a way only children could to show their stubbornness. Oh, Kushina, his stubbornness reminds me so much of you, he recalled with a sad smile. He knew Naruto would not budge from this point. Sighing, he said, But are you sure you will be able to take care of yourself? You will have to cook for yourself, bring food for yourself, clean clothes, keep your home clean, which is very hard considering the size of this house, he explained wisely. However, all that wisdom was thrown out the window when he noticed the look that Naruto was giving him. His face was set in a deadpan stare, an eyebrow raised. He found himself feeling quite stupid when Naruto kept looking at him like that. The deadpan never leaving. He was reminded of another blonde who used to make many people feel stupid with the same look on his face. Naruto spoke seriously, as if he had not noticed how uncomfortable the man was at all. Gigi, When you consider the size of this house, it is clear that no single person could take care of a place such as this by himself. I never said I wanted to live here. A small apartment would do. Besides, his expression turned a bit sad. This house is so big that the loneliness would start to bother me, considering whose house this was in the first place. Hiruzen was surprised at the maturity that Naruto was showing. People thrice his age aren't this mature, he thought with amazement. No matter how many times he saw Naruto, he was always stunned at how mature Naruto was his age. Considering his options, he said, "Give me 1 hour, Naruto. I'm positive I can find an apartment big enough just for you. Until then, I assume you would want to read the contents of those letters," he said, giving a significant glance, complete with the chin down and eyebrows raised. I don't know if you heard that, that's my dog. Naruto suddenly seemed to remember about the envelopes. His hand shot to his lower pocket where he had put them somewhere between his talk with Gigi. He looked up and replied, "Yes, Gigi, that will do." He left after that, muttering things about a matron and execution. After Gigi left, Naruto reached for the first letter that came into his hand. He read the kanji in the letter with wide eyes. "Mother," it said. Hand shaking because of nerves, he opened the letter. Naruto was a pretty fast reader, not because he was eager to finish the books early, more like he was forced to become a fast reader. The matron of the orphanage would give him books, but would take them away very quickly, which is why he forced himself to become a fast reader. But this letter was read very slowly, wanting to taste each word of his mother. I can't do a voice, but you're gonna get the gist. "Dear Naruto, oh my sweet little child, how I wish I were alive to see you grow into a fine young man like your father. I'm writing this letter in case something happens to us and you are left alone. If you are reading this, it means that we are dead and we are so sorry for leaving you, baby." Yikes. "First things first, I love you with all my heart, Naruto. A mother never stops loving her child, even in death. Know that I am still watching over you. And another thing, don't you dare visit me unless you're 110 years old. I want you to live a full and happy life and only die of old age. Second, if you decide to become a shinobi, remember the 3 vices of shinobi life. First is alcohol. Be responsible about it and don't become a drunk. Second is money. Use it responsibly and try not to waste it. If you do want to waste it, better do it on your wife. The third is women. And as your mother, I absolutely forbid you to become a pervert and a womanizer. Respect women and also find a woman you love and want to spend your life with. Don't settle for anything else." At the bottom of this letter, you will see 2 kanji. The first one contains my sword, if you would ever decide to pick up kenjutsu. The second contains the ring with which your father proposed me with. Give it to the girl you believe will love you for the rest of your life. Once again, your father and I love you no matter what. Remember that, Naruto. With love, Kushina Uzumaki. P.S. Learn Fuin Jutsu. The Uzumakis were known for it and your father mastered it as well. I have left 10 volumes of Fuin Jutsu that I got from the Uzumaki archives. Everything you need to become a master. Best of luck. That was my best impression. I'm so sorry. That was like my best. That was the best voice I could do. If it wasn't, up to par, I understand, but I tried my hardest. But, yeah, let me continue. Naruto was dumbfounded after reading the letter from his mother. I'm just going to change that. He could not find the words to express how fulfilling and satisfying and amazing it was to hear words from his mother, even if it was on a letter. He saw in the kanji that his mother mentioned and smiled his face-splitting grin at that. His mother was awesome. He was so hyped up from reading his mother's letter that he almost forgot about his father's. He put the letter down gently, as if it were made of glass, and picked his father's letter up. "Dear Naruto, if you are reading this letter, then it means that I am no longer among the living. I desperately hope that your mother is with you, but if that is not the case, allow me to explain a few things to you. My name is Minato Namikaze, and as you have probably guessed, the Yondaime Hokage. If you already know this, then you are probably in the academy. If not, it is good to read. Keep it up. If you did not, yikes. If you did not know about my identity as your father before this letter, please don't be upset at the Sandaime Hokage. I left him specific instructions that you were to be told about my identity only if you were a Chunin or married. I made many enemies during the Third Great Shinobi War, especially from Iwa. If people were to know about it, you would be a prime target for all of my enemies. I just want you to know that even if you are yet to be born, I love you with all my heart. It was the happiest day of my life when your mother announced that she was pregnant with you. Since I was an orphan, I really don't have any special jutsu to give you, but what I have left, I hope you master them. The improved notes I made from scratch in my quest to learn and master the Nidaime Sama's Hiraishin no Jutsu are in the first kanji at the bottom of this letter. Also, I leave the Rasengan to you in hopes that you can complete it, something that I could never do. It is in the second kanji. Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, and she was the loveliest and one of the most compassionate women I've ever met in my life. She is perhaps the only one who loves you more than I do. I have left you another surprise in the basement of this house, something of my own design and perhaps my greatest Fuinjutsu achievement yet, other than mastering the 8 trigram ceiling style. The details are in the basement. Enjoy! With all love in the world, Dad. And I didn't even try to do an impression, but I just tried to slow it down a little bit, let each word sink. But let me continue and get sidetracked. Naruto did not know when he had started crying, but he did not care. He could feel his parents' love from the letter. He could almost see them smiling down on him from above. He wiped his tears off, a determined glint in his eyes. He would do his parents proud. He looked up and noticed that only a little over 5 minutes had passed. Good. A lot of time to explore. He nudged his partner mentally. Hey, Kurama, you awake? We can finally explore the house. All he heard was a deep snore reverberating in his mindscape that caused Naruto to sweat drop. How the hell was Kurama sleeping? He was awake just 10 minutes ago. It's impossible to fall asleep that quickly when all you do is laze around and not even get tired. He decided to leave the snoring fox alone and explore by himself. He found out that the room he slept the previous night in was his parents' room. Surprisingly, he found out that it was a little easier to not cry now. He found out that there were 4 bedrooms in total, his parents' and his on the first floor, the guest bedroom on the second floor. One good thing about his and his parents' bedrooms was that they had balconies attached to them. He got out of the house and was stupefied at the space in the back of the house. It was almost 1/4 the size of a training ground, and Konoha's training grounds were very large. He then finally decided to explore the basement, curious about the gift his father had left for him. Climbing down the stairs, he saw the basement and whistled lowly, impressed with his father even more. He connected the dots and had to chuckle at how clever his father was. The basement was almost the size of their backyard, if only a bit smaller. But what was interesting was that there was a glass screen separating a large part of the basement from him. And just below the screen there was a panel with 7 kanjis, each representing the numbers 1 to 7. He was a bit confused at that, and further, when he saw a large seal array of the ceiling of the basement on the other side of the glass. He turned around hoping to find something that would explain what the hell he was looking at. He spotted a notebook labeled Training Manual and picked it up. He found another note from his father. Dear Naruto, this is a training manual for what you are currently looking at, my greatest achievement till the date. This is a training room I have designed to improve my taijutsu. While not weak at it, I was not exactly strong either. I designed it and incorporated several taijutsu styles courtesy of Guy and Kakashi. If you ever meet Guy, just be a little cautious. He's always a bit too much. You must have noticed the 7 kanjis on the panel. They are the 7 levels of training, each more difficult than the rest. I must advise you not to immediately go in there, even if you have learned the taijutsu style already. I have designed this training room in synchronization to resistance seals. You must only start if you have mastered the 6th level of resistance seals. If you are able to move comfortably at that level, you may begin from the 1st level. As you move on to a higher resistance, you can move on to the next level. For example, if you have mastered the 7th level of resistance, you can safely try the second level of the training room. I have left a scroll of the taijutsu style I created for myself. If you want it, you can learn it. It's up to you. Or you can create a style for yourself. Remember, whatever fighting style you learn, it should be the symbolization of the 5 main elements of nature. It should be as aggressive as fire, as sharp as wind, as fast as lightning, as strong as earth, and as fluid as water. Good luck, Dad. Naruto was amazed at the end of the letter. His dad created a whole training room with simulations with Fuin Jutsu. From what he read until now, Fuin Jutsu is perhaps the most versatile art among all ninja arts. Anything is possible with Fuin Jutsu. He started making plans on how he was going to proceed when his keen ears picked up a voice calling his name. Gigi must be back, he thought. As he raced back upwards, closing the door of the basement behind him, he took the letters with him, stuffing them in his pockets and walking to the gate. I thought they were already in his pockets. Okay, opening it to talk to Gigi. Ah, Naruto, he greeted. I trust that you have explored the house. Naruto smiled. It's great. Hiruzen chuckled. Good, good. Now, as you said, I have found an apartment for you. Naruto gave the smallest of nods. So, can I go there and see it? Hiruzen nodded. I'll take you there myself. Gripping Naruto's shoulder firmly, he vanished in a shunswing. Shunshin? Shunswing? I don't know, man. Appearing in front of a building, Hiruzen guided Naruto in. I've already stocked it with what you might need, he explained as they arrived on the top floor. Stopping in front of the door, Hiruzen pushed the door and let Naruto and himself in. The first thought that Naruto had upon seeing his apartment was that it was small, just big enough for him. The second was that it was perfect. The third was awe, seeing that it was stocked with a bed, a dining table, a kitchen with a stove and a refrigerator, and a bedroom with a bathroom and an attached balcony. The bedroom even had 2 racks for clothes and other belongings. Hiruzen gave a small smile, seeing how Naruto was awed like any other child when something new was given to them. Sorry. You can stay here until you get married. After that, you can move into your parents' home. He waited on the sofa for Naruto to finish exploring the apartment, which was not long enough. He stood up when Naruto walked in the living room. So, how is it? He was totally unprepared for Naruto to come bowling over to him, wrapping his arms around him in a hug that sent all the air out of his lungs. Only bracing himself at the last second caused him to prevent falling over backwards. Instead, he wrapped his arms around the boy in a bear hug. Naruto separated first, unshed tears in his eyes. It's perfect, Gigi. Thank you so much. Hiruzen smiled, relieved that Naruto liked it. Now, before I go, here is your monthly stipend, he said, handing over a wad of notes. This is 12,000 yen. Spend it wisely. Is there anything else you need before I go? Naruto thought for a moment and said, his face the epitome of seriousness. A cooking book would be nice. Wait, one second. I just lost it. Alright, I'm back. Roaming the streets in the evening, Naruto thought back to the afternoon's conversation. The old man had almost face-faulted at Naruto's request. When asked why he wanted a cooking book, Naruto responded with his signature, making you feel stupid with just a look. He made the Hokage sweat for a minute before answering that he wanted to learn cooking because he did not want to waste his money eating outside, where he would be outrageously overpriced. That brought him to his main problem. Although Gigi had stocked his fridge with all healthy foods, it would eventually be finished and he would have to buy more, which meant he would be overpriced for every item he bought. He sighed, shaking his head at the villager's stupidity. Really? Just because Kurama lived inside him did not mean he was Kurama. Just like when you put sweets in a box and close it, that box does not become the sweets itself. And quite frankly, Kurama felt insulted that because Naruto was called a demon instead of him. I'm the only demon here. Damn it, he always said. That, in turn, reminded him of another matter. He spoke inside. Hey, Kurama, I need your help. It was almost a minute before the Biju responded. With what, brat? Naruto honestly did not mind Kurama calling him a brat. He would prefer it over Demon Boy any day. Also, it warmed his heart every time he heard it because the fondness in the voice was as clear as day. I need your help in unlocking my chakra, he replied. Kurama, now fully awake from his nap, raised an eyebrow. Why now? You could unlock it when you entered the academy like everyone else. Resolutely shaking his head, Naruto replied, No! When I enter the academy, I'm going to be ahead of everyone, not with everyone. And if I have to start my training to become a shinobi with all the materials from mom and dad, I will start now. Kurama released a sigh. He hated it sometimes when Naruto acted like his mother. Kushina was infuriating, the tomato brat that she was. Okay, head to one of the training fields, he instructed. Naruto nodded before changing directions towards the training field. He entered the first one he saw and ensured that no one was around. He sat down in an Indian position, entering a meditative trance and waiting for a pull into his mindscape from Kurama. He did not have to wait long, but did not see a certain purpled-haired kunoichi looking at him curiously from the entrance of the training grounds. Uncle Mitarashi was a Tokubetsu Jonin of Konoha, specialized in interrogation and worked directly under Ibiki Marino, the famed interrogator of Konoha. She was powerful, after all, being a former apprentice of one of the Densetsu no Sani in Orochimaru. Just because she was Orochimaru's apprentice meant she was given the kind of treatment that should honestly be reserved for the likes of Orochimaru. She was called the Snake Bitch by the populace of Konoha. But she took it head on and made a fearful reputation for herself, ensuring the villagers kept their distance. She also knew that one another suffered the same treatment at the hands of the villagers. But she was not that stupid to believe that the blonde would be Kyuubi in human form. He intrigued her. The way he endured the hatred of the villagers and never backed down, for a 5-year-old that was seriously impressive. So when she saw the blonde going towards the training field, her interest in him was piqued. She decided to follow him to see what was going on, what he was going to do. She saw how he observed his surroundings and decided to humor him by simply being hidden at the entrance, out of sight for him, but visible to anyone else. What the hell is this boy doing? She thought with a raised eyebrow. Naruto arrived in his mindscape and saw Kurama resting at the shore of a very large body of water, one he knew was not there before. Where the hell did that come from? He thought as he approached Kurama. Kurama sensed his approach and opened his eyes, looking at Naruto with an intense look. Naruto, do you know what this is? He asked, gesturing to the water body. Naruto shook his head, seeing that Kurama explained. This water body is the representation of your chakra. But before we begin to unlock your chakra, I discovered something very interesting about your body. Smiling at the end, Naruto tilted his head to the side. What? Kurama was as blunt as a hammer. You don't have chakra coils in your body, kid. Naruto's reaction was priceless. What? Kurama chuckled. Naruto's reaction to surprises was turning out to be very amusing. Just a little hint, but yeah, in the coming days we should also see some improvements there. And let me know down below if you do see them. And I've been rambling for way too long. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, the author also reads, this chapter will have a mini time skip, okay? Kurama was as blunt as a hammer. You don't have chakra coils in your body, kid. Naruto's reaction was priceless. What? Kurama chuckled. Naruto's reaction to surprises was turning out to be very amusing. He watched as Naruto seemed to have a panic attack within his own mind. The mind responded to his mental state, shaking violently. Kurama understood just how much that had rattled Naruto. Calm down, kid. I wasn't finished. Seeing how Naruto was showing no signs of calming down, Kurama let loose a small bit of his killing intent, enough to make a Jonin sweat. Naruto, however, was totally inexperienced in experiencing killer intent, therefore his reaction was entirely predictable. Naruto instantly froze in his place, all thoughts of Kurama's news fleeing his mind as he registered the new feeling. The mindscape stopped shaking. As Naruto slowly turned towards Kurama, voice shaking, he asked, What was that? Kurama stared Naruto in the eyes, indicating he was serious. That was killing intent. Used by shinobis to intimidate each other. However, whoever has the higher killing intent is able to make the other suffer illusions of death. If the killing intent is potent enough, I'm surprised, though, that you managed to stay conscious, he said with a raised eyebrow. Naruto was taking deep breaths during Kurama's explanation, trying to calm down. By the end of the explanation, he was almost back to his normal self, scowling a bit. And you thought that was the best way to calm someone who's having a panic attack? Shrugging a little bit, Kurama defended himself. You have to start someday. Also, that was only a little bit of my killing intent. You have yet to experience my full killing intent. He finished, grinning maliciously in the end. I'm sorry, I'm trying different voices, trying to figure out what's best. I digress. Let's continue. Naruto, for his credit, showed no reaction and kept his face neutral. He would deal with this some other day. For now, he had to focus on his chakra problem. Clearing his throat, he asked, "What were you saying about my chakra coils before?" Kurama sat up, towering over Naruto, who had to look up towards him. As I said, there are no chakra coils in your body, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, at least not yet. You first have to unlock your chakra so I can see if this is a problem or not. Naruto nodded, now fully in control of his emotions. He then gestured towards the lake. "What is that? I don't remember seeing it yesterday when I changed my mindscape." Kurama nodded at him. "You would be right. However, do you remember your question to me concerning trauma and your mindscape?" Naruto tilted his head, his eyes agreeing to Kurama's question. Kurama said, "Well then, that theory applies to this lake as well. You may change your mindscape to anything, but there will always be a representation of what is already there within your mind and body." Gesturing to the lake, he explained, "There are two things of importance that you need to know about this lake. Obviously, this represents your chakra, but there are some other things as well. The size of this lake, however, represents the size of your reserves. I have minor difficulty in seeing the end of this lake, which means your reserves are impressively large for your age. The depths of this lake represents the density of your chakra. The deeper it is, the denser and more powerful your chakra is." Naruto was listening intently to Kurama. He had to admit he couldn't see the other side of the lake, which meant that his reserves would have to be very large. The question that now remained was how deep the lake was. As if reading his mind, see what I did there? Kurama nodded knowingly. "Oh, that was an author note." "You have to dive inside the lake to find out how deep it is. Before you do that, touch the water and tell me what you feel." Naruto frowned in confusion at the odd request, but he nodded, touching the water, and instantly his frown deepened, as if he didn't like the feeling. Kurama turned his head towards him, asking, "What do you feel, Naruto?" Naruto removed his hand from the lake, saying, "Like it's incomplete. Something else should be there, but it's not." Kurama nodded his head in agreement. "Okay, that missing thing is your chakra. Once you unlock your chakra, that feeling will be gone. Now get into the lake and unlock it," he almost ordered Naruto. Naruto thought for a moment about how to proceed with this. Deciding it, he jumped into the lake. He jumped inside, taking a deep breath. He swam his hands forward in a sharp motion, pulling them back to go deeper. He kept swimming for what felt like an eternity. How deep is this lake? How dense is my chakra? Thoughts like these kept running through his head as he continued to go deeper. Strangely, he felt no need to breathe in this lake. Must be because I'm swimming in my own mind, he deduced. Finally, he saw what appeared to be the bottom. His efforts to reach there hastened. As soon as his hands touched the floor in the lake, he instinctively knew that his chakra was just beneath him. I wasn't saying geez because the word was hard. I was saying geez because I mispronounced it. I digress. The floor of the lake was acting as a barrier between him and his chakra. He just needed a way to break the barrier so he could access his chakra. He decided to dump logic for this situation and force his way like a brute. Any idea that would probably not work, but worth trying. Considering that this was his body and mind, the barrier would be only strong enough so he could break it with enough effort. He pulled his hand back and punched the ground as hard as he could. He repeated this for 19 times. On the 20th time, a small crack appeared on the floor. Naruto noticed the crack and grinned with satisfaction. "About time you cracked," he thought. Redoubling his efforts, he saw that with every punch the crack widened. At last, the crack was big enough that he knew it would break in one last punch. Pulling back his fist, he brought it back with all the force he could muster. As soon as his fist connected, the ground shattered from beneath him, and he was assaulted by an absolute euphoria. He felt complete now. The earlier feeling of something missing, now completely gone. But the force with which the chakra was released was so great that he was forced out of the lake in just a few moments, contrary to the time he took to reach the bottom. The last thing he heard from Kurama before being forced out of his awake was, "Damn, I haven't felt chakra this dense and powerful since the tree hugger himself. But the midnight blue is unusual." Hashirama, obviously. Jeez. I was like, I'm confused who the tree hugger is, but then Hashirama is the only one. I'm getting sidetracked, my bad. I tend to do that pretty frequently. Oh, I thought it was low. Anko was watching the blonde for almost 20 minutes now. Just what is he hoping to accomplish, she thought. She was getting impatient now. Just as she was about to turn and leave, she felt it. It was impossible to ignore given how powerful the presence was. She wheeled around, eyes wide, staring at Naruto. He couldn't possibly be. Naruto's eyes opened a second before midnight blue chakra exploded from him. It was so dense and powerful that the ground around him cracked violently. Wind was blowing all around, very fast by the sheer force of his chakra. Naruto lifted his hands in front of him, seeing the beautiful midnight blue color of his chakra flowing from his body. It almost seemed to be sparkling. The feeling was so exhilarating that he almost missed Kurama's voice. "Naruto, you're letting out too much chakra. Stop right now!" Naruto fortunately noticed the urgency of Kurama's voice and immediately thought about reining it in. To his surprise, the chakra stopped exploding from him almost instantly. Unfortunately, he had expelled too much of it. The sudden coming down from a high like that caused him to fall unconscious on his back. Anko, who had watched the whole spectacle, was looking at Naruto with eyes wide as dinner plates. Was that Kyuubi's chakra that exploded? What the hell? That exploded? Wait, what? You see now? I just lost it. Was that Kyuubi's chakra that exploded from him? No, the Kyuubi's chakra is orange. That chakra that exploded from him was blue, an unusual darker shade, but blue nonetheless, which means that chakra was his, she thought incredulously. Incredulously? Jeez, that is a vocab word and a half. Okay. Her one hand was now on her mouth. The amount that he was letting go could easily rival the Sandai maze. But how did he unlock it? And that too so early? All kinds of questions were flashing through her mind, but seeing the kid fall unconscious on his back, she rushed to him, checking to see if he was alright. A sigh of relief escaped her when she saw that he had just collapsed from mild chakra exhaustion. He must be only 5 to 6 years old. Unlocking chakra at such a young age is unheard of. Most children unlock it after spending years at the academy, and this kid does it before entering the academy? She thought, again with the incredulously, Jeez, man. I'm sorry, that is a word. Try saying that word 10 times fast. That'll get you. Or at least it gets me. It suddenly occurred to her that a blast of chakra like that would have attracted the attention of almost all shinobi in the village. Shinobi training kicking in, she picked the kid up and vanished in a shunshui to the Hokage's office. I think that's how you pronounce it. If not, let me know. The Hokage sat in his chair, eyes glaring at a pile of paperwork that seems to have materialized out of nowhere. And just as he finishes the previous file, he is ridiculously irritated at how it so innocently sat in front of him. This is ridiculous. This blasted paperwork has to be a force of nature. There is no end to it at all. It is always mocking me. To anyone watching, including the Anbu guards in the room, it seemed hilarious how the Hokage was locked in a glaring contest with paperwork of all things. But the captain of the Anbu group could relate to his boss, having to deal with something similar after every mission they do. Hiruzen finally lost his patience after staring at it for almost 15 minutes. Ooh, another notification. After 15 minutes, so infuriated was the old Hokage that he positioned his hands into a tiger seal and took a deep breath, intent on burning the paperwork away. He was 1 second away from setting the paperwork on fire when he sensed it. The powerful burst of chakra, so powerful, he was sure almost every shinobi in the village felt it, censor or not. Let me take a sip of my drink real quick. So good. What was that? I didn't think And he was like, what was that? I didn't know any shinobi of mine was capable of releasing chakra on this scale. From what I sensed, it was powerful, overwhelmingly so. But there was no intention in that burst of chakra. No evil or good. It was simply neutral. Just what is going on, he thought. He decided that any shinobi who might be near the burst of chakra would respond and report to him shortly. With that, he turned his attention back onto the table and put his hands on it. Closing his eyes, 5 minutes later, his door was unlocked. He answered, "Come in." The door opened to show his secretary, Ikumi, a middle-aged woman gesturing towards a purple-haired kunoichi carrying a familiar child with blonde hair in her arms. "Naruto, what happened to you now?" he thought in a worry as he quickly gestured her inside. Anko gently laid Naruto on the couch in the office and then turned to face the Hokage. Oh, AirPod thing. Let me check if I'm still recording, just in case. I really do not... Okay, there we go. I really did not want to have to reread this again. His eyes were hardened, having the look of a true legendary shinobi instead of a man who was reduced to doing paperwork. His voice had an edge of steel. "What happened, Anko?" Anko was not nervous at all. She had done nothing wrong. "Hokage-sama, I was just passing by the training fields when I saw Naruto Uzumaki sitting in the middle of the training field in a meditating position. I was curious, so I hid from his sight and observed for anything that would happen. 20 minutes passed and I was about to leave when I saw the most extraordinary thing, Hokage-sama." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. A burst of powerful chakra and Anko comes to him with an unconscious Naruto. There seems to be a link here. "What did you witness, Anko?" "A burst of chakra so powerful that I haven't felt anything like it before, Hokage-sama. The ground around him seemed to crack just by the force of his chakra." Yo, if you hear that in the background, that is my dog. He's adjusting himself. He's done that in 2 videos now. Yikes. Hiruzen's eyebrows went upward and You good? I'm just checking on my dog. Make sure he's alright. Being weird. Oh, sorry, I digress. Let's get back into it. Hiruzen's eyebrows went upwards in a disbelieving motion. "You mean to say that Naruto here," he gestured to the boy on the couch, "unlocked his chakra, and the burst of chakra from before was his chakra?" "Hi, Okage-sama." Anko nodded in agreement. Hiruzen sat back in his chair, finding it quite hard to believe what Anko had told him. However, Anko had no reason to lie to him. Still, how was this possible? "Anko," he said to the kunoichi, Stay here right now until he wakes up. I believe we should hear this from the source," he said, looking at Naruto. Naruto was lying on his back in his mindscape, staring at the sky. Kurama was right beside him. Another one. I promise you, these are just videos. These are not like comments or none of that. Naruto was lying on his back in his mindscape, staring at the sky. Kurama was right beside him, head rested on his hands, looking content. Naruto sat up, eyes blinking around in confusion. What happened? Kurama replied in a bored tone, "You fell unconscious. It's as simple as that." Naruto's eyes widened in realization. "I unlocked my chakra. So what does that mean for my body, Kurama?" he asked, eager to address the problem of his absence of chakra coils. Kurama glanced at him. I observed the release of your chakra, and I have good news. You can still control your chakra." Naruto seemed to practically melt in relief at that. "That's good. I wasn't finished." Kurama's voice brought him back again. "Your absence of chakra coils makes it easier for you to control your chakra. You can directly control it without having to rely on chakra coils, which means you will have excellent chakra control." Hearing this, Naruto started jumping around in joy. He would be able to become a shinobi after all. Moreover, his chakra control would be excellent. Kurama was quick to burst his bubble, however, continuing the same lazy tone as before. "You were lucky, however. Most people would not be so fortunate as to control chakra without chakra coils." Naruto stopped dancing around and turned to Kurama with wide eyes. "Then why am I different?" At this, Kurama shrugged and didn't bother to answer, saying only one thing before falling back to sleep. "Start training to use it." With Kurama now asleep, Naruto had nothing to do in his mindscape. Might as well wake up, he thought. He walked up to the stream and promptly fell face first into it. Oh my gosh, he did a belly flop into the stream. It had been over 10 minutes since they were waiting for Naruto to wake up. Anko honestly did not know why the Hokage had asked her to wait in his office, But she had to follow whatever the Hokage said, so she waited, albeit impatiently. Hiruzen, on the other hand, was contemplating on what to do. He was in his classic thinking pose, elbows on the desk, chin rested on his hairs and eyes closed. On his hands and eyes closed. If what Anko had said was really true, and Naruto had unlocked his chakra, then perhaps it was time for Naruto's training to begin. He had thought that Naruto would grow up normally in the academy, but it seemed nothing was normal if it was connected to Naruto. Maybe he could get Anko to train him. Suddenly, he heard a groan from where Naruto was laid. His and Anko's eyes snapped there as Naruto sat up, looking no worse for wear. His eyes seemed confused as he did not recognize where he was. However, as soon as he saw him and Anko, the wariness clouding his eyes suddenly disappeared, replaced by cautiousness. "How the hell did I get here?" he mumbled as he studied the purple-haired kunoichi. He had never seen her before. The kunoichi spoke in a rude tone. "I brought you here after successfully altering the entire shinobi force of this village. What the hell were you even doing in the training field, brat?" Naruto suddenly remembered that he had unlocked his chakra successfully and did not stop the full-blown grin on his face. "Unlocking my chakra," he replied in a cool tone. "But how did you know to unlock your chakra, Naruto-kun?" Oh, I did not know that was a voice, like a vocal speaking thing for... Jesus. Oh, I have a hard time speaking, if you can't tell. Hiruzen asked curiously. A 5-year-old child unlocking their chakra without any outside help was simply unheard of, not to mention how powerful his chakra was. Naruto did not think he would be dragged into the Hokage's office to explain how he unlocked his chakra. He needed time to build up a lie about it. Unfortunately, he didn't have it, as both of them were looking at him expectantly, so he just gave them his patented, making you feel stupid with a simple look. Both of their sweat dropped, thinking along the lines of, how does he do that so well? Fortunately for Naruto, it allowed him time to come up with a convincing lie. Well, chakra is inside everyone, right? I thought if I looked deep inside myself, I would find it too. For the you-know-what, right, Gigi? Hiruzen looked confused, but realized it. Naruto wanted to unlock his chakra to get access to the things his parents left behind for him. But now, time to address the elephant in the room. Okay, it's not letting me do it. It's not. Oh. Okay. Sorry, give me a second. Okay, there we go. That was so weird. Why does it... Okay, I'm not even gonna worry about it. Now that you have unlocked your chakra, Naruto, what will you do? Naruto frowned for a moment and crossed his hands, causing Anko to hold back her urge to hug him and yell, "Kawaii!" The kid looked mighty adorable. Naruto said, "I will train, or so I would like to say. Unfortunately, I have no idea as to how I should proceed now. Books have always been the thing to answer my problem, but I feel that books can't teach me what I need to know practically," he revealed honestly. Perfect. Hiruzen thought with a hidden smile. Normally, he would have Naruto wait for another year, letting him join the academy and then letting him learn all he needed. But he knew that Naruto was a naturally curious child. Who knows what experiments he would do to find out what he could do. It would be dangerous to leave Naruto to his own devices, or chakra. His eyes shifted to Anko, who's watching Naruto and barely restraining herself from glumping him. Okay. But if he were to get an instructor to teach him early, many of the consequences could be avoided. Also, since Naruto is a genius, he may not really fit in with his age group. Not only because he would be far ahead of them, but also because even his generation keeps their distance from him. Also, I have this feeling that Naruto and Anko will bond spectacularly. Okay. Sorry. He barely kept himself from grinning. Naruto can still enter the academy at the proper age and graduate with his age group class. Many of the teachers may not give him the proper education because of their struggles and grudges against the Kyuubi, but that treatment would be null and void if he is already far ahead. The council will surely protest against this, calling this favoritism, but I can justify myself by saying that the village's Jinchuriki must be trained early so he could be ready for anything. The foolish council members will blindly agree to this, and if they don't, who are they to go against the Hokage? Oh, the pieces of Naruto's puzzle are falling together wonderfully, he thought to himself gleefully. I don't know why I read that as if I was like an anime villain explaining his plot of villainy or whatever the term is, but I don't know why I read it like that, but I digress. Outward, he said, then it is probably safer to get you an instructor rather than you experimenting on your own. Uncle finally caught on to the Hokage's plans as she wheeled around to face him with wide eyes. Hokage-sama, you can't possibly... I appoint Uncle Mitarashi as the instructor of Naruto Uzumaki, effective immediately, he declared. Naruto's eyes, along with Kurama's, were wide as dinner plates. This was totally unexpected. Naruto never expected to get a personal instructor. He, the village pariah, jailer of the Kyuubi, but he was happy that he... and all that... What? But he was happy and that was all that mattered to him. Okay, I'm just gonna interpret some of these words. For Kurama, he found it hard to believe that the old monkey had balls big enough to pull off this kind of stunt at his age. Yo. Okay. That was actually pretty funny. Uncle protested, but Hokage-sama, do you have a problem with my decision, Uncle? He asked with his voice hard. Uncle immediately stood in attention. No, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen immediately smiled, reverting back to his grandfather persona. Good, I knew you would have no problem. Anko's sweat dropped at how fast the old man could change personalities. She actually thought that he was showing favoritism because everybody knew how close he was to Naruto. But she also saw how special Naruto was. But she was not cut out to be an instructor. Rather, she didn't want to. She was more suited out in the field. Turning to Naruto, he then said, Naruto, you can go back to your apartment, and Anko and I have something to discuss. Also, report to the training field behind this tower tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. sharp. Oh, yo, let me get another sip of my drink, please, you know. Alright, my bad. Naruto nodded and immediately left through the window. Turning his attention back to the special Jonin, he said, Uncle, you have to understand that this is necessary. Naruto will face many difficulties in the future, and I feel that by the time everyone acknowledges him and comes to support him, it will be too late. Also, give him a chance. He will surprise you, he said with the utmost seriousness. Anko was hesitant but nodded. Truthfully, she did not want to do this, but had to anyways. The fact the Hokage told the brat and her to report to the Hokage training fields was a surprise, since they were exclusively reserved for the Hokage. She headed back to her apartment, thinking about how she should go about this. Naruto sat, eating his dinner on his dinner table. The cooking book the Hokage had provided was invaluable, allowing him to cook food for himself. He made sure to follow the instructions in the book word for word, and the result were broth eating. I might have some natural aptitude for cooking, otherwise I would have already blown the kitchen up, he mused. He was eternally grateful for what the old man had done for him. Now that he thought about it, he figured that when he entered the academy 2 years later, some instructors would be prone to discriminate with him. Against him? No, it says with him. Okay. Perhaps this was the way of the old man looking out for him in his shinobi life, he thought. He finished the dinner and washed the plates. After that, he proceeded to his bedroom and lay down on his bed, closing his eyes. Tomorrow will be interesting indeed. Yes, it will. Naruto's eyes opened as soon as the alarm he had set rang. His hand reached out and shut the alarm clock. Waking up at 5:30 in the morning left him plenty of time to get ready. He finished his morning rituals in 10 minutes and dressed in his normal orange jumpsuit. He went to the fridge and pulled out 2 bananas, peeling one and eating it at a comfortable pace, followed by the second. He finished and looked up at the clock. 5:30. Best get going, he thought. He went up and out the door. Making sure to lock it up properly, he hid the key inside the potted plant near the staircase. He exited the building and ran towards the grounds. The sun was just beginning to rise, so the air was still cool as it hit his face. He smiled as he increased the pace and reached the ground with 1 minute to spare. He was surprised to see that just as he had reached the grounds, his new teacher also reached at the same time. Her eyes showed surprise at his appearance, but she gestured him to follow her. They arrived in the training ground after Anko said to the guards that they were authorized to use it. Arriving at the middle of the ground, she said, "Sit down, brat. Introduce yourself." Naruto frowned at the way she said it, but did it anyways. "Naruto Uzumaki, age 5. Likes are reading and training, and dislikes are the people who can't differentiate between a kunai and a sealing scroll. Hobbies are none of your business, and dream is to become the strongest Hokage ever." He began in a monotone, became slightly rude in the middle, and finished it with a grin and a thumbs up. Wait, what? Where did it get rude? Hobbies aren't in your business. Okay, that's where it got rude. Anko grinned in a savage way at his introduction. Not many people had the guts to be rude to her, but this rat had no problem doing it. Time to instill the fear, she thought maliciously. Grabbing his collar, she jerked him forward until they were nose to nose. In a deadly whisper, she said, "I don't like brats like you, who think that just because they're getting special treatment, they're above others." Naruto replied unfazed, "And just because you're older and more powerful than me doesn't mean you have to be rude." Anko smirked and let go of Naruto, who sat back down. "I like you, kid, which means that I won't go easy on you. Get up and give me 10 rounds of this ground fast." And so he began his training. For a whole 4 weeks, she just concentrated on his physical conditioning. She wanted him to be physically fit for what she was about to mold him into. She was surprised at how obediently Naruto followed her commands. Whatever she told him to do, he did without question. She ran him into the ground every day, so exhausted he was that as soon as she announced that the training for the day was over, he would collapse onto the ground, unable to move. She always carried him back to his home and laid him in his bed. She also left him a bento every time, knowing he didn't have the energy to cook. Kurama always woke him up to eat. Naruto thanked her profusely every time, but she always waved him away, saying it was the duty of her sensei to care for the student. She didn't want him to know that she was also growing fond of him. That would be embarrassing. I don't see how, but okay. Another good thing that Naruto and Anko didn't know was that every time Naruto came back exhausted, Kurama always healed him up with his chakra. The good thing about this was that after every session, Naruto's muscles would be stronger than before. Because if you don't know scientifically, it works like that. Requiring much more to get exhausted. Today is the day he would learn to control chakra, and he was excited as hell. Usually after his 15 rounds of the ground, Anko increased them. Anko decided he was satisfactorily warmed up and began explaining chakra control. "Alright, kid, the first step to controlling chakra is to take a leaf and use your chakra to stick it in your forehead like this," she said, demonstrating the exercise. Naruto nodded before picking up the leaf from the ground and keeping it on his forehead and imagining his chakra creating a suction at the point where the leaf touched his forehead. Surprisingly, it took him only 3 times. I very much dislike when I have like little tongue trips is what I'm going to call them. But I'm going to continue. It only took him 3 tries to get the amount of chakra right. On the 4th try, the leaf was easily sticking to his forehead, and he stood there smiling proudly. He knew he would have good chakra control due to his lack of chakra coils. Using chakra for the first time felt really good. He simply had to imagine how his chakra flowed and sort of commanded it to do so, and voila, task accomplished. Anko stood there, gaping at Naruto pause. But most kids took 4 or 5 days to get this exercise right, and this kid had done it in 5 minutes? Absolutely unbelievable and outright ridiculous. She decided, does the term normal even apply to this kid? She thought with a twitching eyebrow. "Hey, Anko-sensei, now that I've got it, what's next?" Naruto asked with a grin. At this point, he was keeping the leaf stick with only minimal concentration. Anko grinned, a grin that Naruto never liked. It always meant doom. "Now," she said, taking out shuriken. "Keep that leaf stuck and dodge these." With that, she threw the shuriken at him. It was only his danger sense that saved him from being skewered. This continued for almost 15 minutes, and at the end of those, Naruto was heavily panting. "She looked like she almost wanted to kill me," he thought, drawing deep breaths. Anko looked proud. "Well done, Naruto. You successfully dodged the shuriken and kept the leaf stuck to your forehead. Take a 5-minute break." "Not many, no scratch that." No one managed to do that on their first try. It was starting to look like this kid was born to be a shinobi. She contemplated if she should teach Naruto the tree walking exercise next. A relatively difficult exercise, a Genin level in fact, but Naruto wasn't even in the academy. Still, doesn't hurt to try. That's true, I guess, let him do it, you feel me? After the 5-minute break was over, she called Naruto, and they both walked towards a tree. Your next exercise would be to climb this tree with only your feet, she said. Naruto gave her a quizzical look. Isn't that kind of impossible, sensei? Anko rolled her eyes and lightly bonked him on the back of the head. With the aid of chakra, honestly, where does your intelligence go sometimes? Out of your head? Oh, God. Oh, that was not a great impression. That reminded me of someone else. Oh. Oh. Alright, I'm back. My bad. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and laughed sheepishly. Anko then demonstrated the exercise. This is kind of similar to the leaf sticking exercise, except you're sticking yourself to the tree instead of sticking a leaf to you. If you use too little chakra, your feet won't stick. If you use too much chakra, you'll get blasted off the tree like Team Rocket. What? Begin. You can use a running start if you want. That would be absolutely pointless unless you have the amount of chakra right in your leg, thought Naruto as he walked to the tree and put his right foot on the bark, regulating the amount of chakra prepared to stick. After he got it right, he kept in mind the amount of chakra and carefully pushed with the same amount in his left leg. Taking a deep breath, he lifted his left leg, put it on the bark, not losing concentration in his right leg. A huge smile appeared on his face as he successfully stuck to the bark. Tentatively, he took the next step and managed not to fall off. He continued this until he reached the top of the tree. Anko watched all this with her jaw on the ground. Dango? What the hell? Dango? Long forgotten. There was no possible explanation as to how Naruto managed to walk up the entire tree in 5 minutes of learning the exercise. Then she released a resigned sigh. I don't even want to know anymore. This became the norm for her, everything. Naruto mastered tree walking in 2 hours, water walking in 4 hours, and spinning a kunai above his hand with his chakra in 1 day, all the while dodging Anko's shuriken and kunai. It was now time to give the monthly report to Naruto. What? He asked blankly. It's true, Hokage-sama, Anko insisted. The smoking pipe had long since fallen off his mouth. This had to be some kind of genjutsu. There's no way Naruto mastered all the chakra control exercises in just 2 days. Anko was a very deadly kunoichi, so any students she took, in this case Naruto, had high standards to meet. But for Anko to say that Naruto did all of that in just 2 days, it was too much. He had no doubt that Naruto was very physically capable. He had an Uzumaki heritage and stuff, had monstrous reserves of chakra that could not be matched by anyone of his age. He expected Naruto to have problems in controlling his chakra, but from Anko's report, it looked like he had an excellent control of chakra. Anko then slowly asked him, knowing the Hokage was rattled to his bones by the news. Hokage-sama, can I have your permission to start teaching him ninjutsu and taijutsu? Granted. That pause was intentional, by the way. There's like 5 dots, so it's like ... Granted. You feel me? Naruto stood in his father's library, looking at the volumes of fleeing jutsu his mother had left for him. He picked the first volume and left the house. Anko had very generously given the next day off to him, which he planned to make full use of. For some reason, he thought that Anko was very surprised at the speed at which he mastered those exercises. He had been asking her when he could start learning ninjutsu and taijutsu, but she said that first he needed to build up endurance and stamina. That is fair, by the way. After closing the door to his apartment, he set the thick book on the dining table and entered his bedroom, falling asleep. It was a late night after all, and sneaking around made him tired, especially after his sadistic sensei's training. His alarm rang at 7 next morning. I thought it was 6. Okay, 7 next morning. He did his morning rituals and made himself some breakfast. That reminds me, the stock that Gigi gave me will be finished soon. I need to go shopping, he thought. After breakfast, he picked up the Fleeing Jutsu volume and started reading. He finished it in 4 hours, including the test that his mother wrote for him at the end of the book. I didn't know Fleeing Jutsu was this easy, he thought in confusion as he checked the answers of his test. It's not, you insane child, Kurama grumbled. He'd been seeing and hearing Fuinjutsu since the Tree Huggers era, and frankly, it annoyed the hell out of him. He was much more suited to performing acts of destruction than delicate writing. Oh my gosh. Kurama likes destroying things. I mean, I guess it's understandable, but still. I'm sorry, I digress. I keep doing that, but, you know. Where am I? Oh, also, if you couldn't tell, this is going to be a longer part. It was also specified in the beginning, but I did not know it was going to be this much longer. Hopefully somebody enjoys that and watches it. And gets to this part right here. It has a good laugh because the middle bits are funny. Naruto easily ignored him and finished checking the answers. All of them correct. No surprise there, he thought smugly. Photographic memory was so useful. He finished another volume the same day with the same results in the test at the end of the book. 8 hours of Fuinjutsu was mentally exhausting, he thought. He just slept the rest of the day, waking up only to make and eat dinner, and fell asleep again. Damn. The next day, Anko started his taijutsu training. I'm going to teach you my style of fighting, Naruto. The snake style requires you to be light and flexible, capable of quick strikes and counterattacks, and weaving in between. She then grabbed Naruto's collar. You will learn and master the style in 1 year. Brad or even Kami won't be able to save you from my wrath, she threatened, enforcing her threat with a bit of killing intent. It had absolutely no effect whatsoever, since he had already had a taste of Kurama's killing intent. However, he nodded vigorously. Anko was pretty terrifying, even without killing intent. The next month, he learned Tai and ninjutsu simultaneously. Due to his photographic memory and peculiar ability of his body, he was progressing quickly in taijutsu. He found that even though it was a formidable style, the snake style did not have the symbolizations of all 5 elements. Ninjutsu, on the other hand, he felt like he was born to do it. At this rate, he's born to do everything, but okay. It took him only 5 times to master the Henge no Jutsu. Henge? The Henge? What the hell is the Henge no Jutsu? And 9 tries to master the Kawarimi. Kawarimi? Okay. I wish they would explain that. 2 days later, he had mastered the sealless Kawarimi. Kawarimi. My Hispanic's coming through and I'm rolling my R's. Kawarimi. I don't know how to pronounce that. I really don't. Okay, but no matter how hard he tried, even with his excellent chakra control, could he perform the Bunshin no Jutsu? Eventually, Anko got so fed up that he took the matter to the Hokage, who suggested the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu would be more suited for Naruto. Considering how large his chakra reserves were, it would be impossible for him to squeeze a drop of it that was required to perform the Bunshin. Pause. It took Naruto 2 hours to learn the Kage Bunshin, and when he did learn it, Anko and Hiruzen, who had come to supervise the technique of the Kinjutsu, were dumbstruck at the amount of clones Naruto could make. 100 clones at Naruto's age stupefied the Hokage so much that it took him almost 15 minutes to snap out of his shock. Jesus, that's a long time. Naruto soon discovered a very interesting aspect of the Kage Bunshin. He could remember everything that his clones saw or heard. So he already learned the trick of the Kage Bunshin? Oh my gosh. Yo, what are they not giving him? What? Bro, he's OP. I digress. And he had no qualms about abusing the shadow clones after all. He would make a shadow clone study Fuinjutsu while he trained with Anko. In 8 days, all the volumes of Fuinjutsu were finished. He had even learned how to print seals onto surfaces with his chakra. Oh my gosh! Now, technically, that would make him a seal master, but his mother had written on a note that even after finishing all the volumes, he would have to be tested by a certified seal master to be considered a seal master, which makes sense. It does, if you think about it. He knew no one who was one, so he asked if his GG could test him. But the old man had questions of his own. You're telling me that you finished all volumes of Fuinjutsu your mother left in just 10 days? His voice sounded unbelieving. Naruto nodded, his expression serious. Hiruzen let out a small, nervous chakra. Forgive me, Naruto, if I find that hard to believe. Naruto shrugged. He figured he could tell him of his gifts. When you have photographic memory coupled with shadow clones, you tend to abuse it, Gigi. Hiruzen looked shocked at the fact. You have photographic memory? I don't know why that's the shocking part, but okay. Naruto nodded. Yes. That was a female voice. Oh my gosh. Yes. Damn. Here's an insight. Aside from that, Naruto, but I'm not a certified seal master, and as such, I'm not qualified to test you. He told Naruto regretfully, but my student Jiraiya is. Tell you what, when he visits the village next time, I'll tell him to test you. Is that okay? Naruto figured that he had no choice. Alright. It had been 2 months since Anko and Naruto started training, and he had progressed spectacularly. With the common ninjutsu out of the way, he focused solely on his taijutsu, which grew by leaps and bounds, but he was still far from giving her a challenge. After those 2 months, Anko figured that it wouldn't hurt teaching the boy chakra nature transformations. Naruto sat in front of Anko, who was standing and explaining the chakra nature transformations. There are 5 basic nature transformations: fire, wind, water, lightning, and earth. Each element is connected to each other in a way. Fire is weak against water, but strong against wind. Wind is strong against lightning, but weak against fire. Lightning is strong against earth, but weak against wind, and earth is weak against lightning, but strong against water. Water is strong against fire, but weak against earth. Which makes sense. She handed him a slip of paper. That is chakra paper. It will tell you your chakra affinities. If you have fire, it will burn, tear in half with wind, shrink with lightning, crumble to dust if earth, and soak if water. Yeah. Naruto nodded and focused a tiny bit of his chakra into the paper. What happened next blew his own mind away, along with Anko's. Inside his mind, the QB grinned. Even he did not expect that, but it was a nice surprise. The paper split into 3 parts. One soaked up very heavily, meaning water. The second crumpled into a ball, meaning lightning. And the last one burned to ashes. Anko threw up her hands and walked away. Also, you have to remember that it's split into 3. So I think it also means wind, but I could be wrong, but I think that's how it works because they said it'll tear with wind. Okay. I'm just talking. My bad. Naruto blinked for a second and then grinned. Awesome! When the Hokage came to know, he promptly fainted like a schoolgirl. Jeez, all he does is fall asleep. I just gotta know. When he woke up, he was convinced that Naruto would grow up to become the most unpredictable ninja ever. True. What happened in the next 3 months was chakra nature manipulation. He would make 4 groups of 25, each group practicing a different nature. He's talking about shadow clones, by the way. For the first time, he had a challenge. Changing the nature of chakra was a lot more difficult than he thought. It took him 1 whole month to master only the first step of elemental manipulation for all 4 of his affinities. Cutting a leaf in half for wind. Yes, so it does mean wind, by the way. Collecting water from the leaf for water. Shrinking up the leaf for lightning. Burning the leaf for fire. So on and so forth. The only affinity he doesn't have is earth? Bruh. Man. The second and final step took him a whole 2 months. For wind, it was cutting a rock clean in half. For water, it was separating water from other liquids. For lightning, it was cracking a stone into pieces. For lightning. For fire, it was boiling water. Anko had left him to his own devices after he started his elemental training, but checked in on him every now and then. He always teased her on how she was acting like his mother, which resulted in him having a bruise on his hand. Why would he keep teasing her then if he would... Okay. After those 3 months, however, he finally met his godfather. Okay, I told myself once we got to this little time skip, I'd stop, but I feel like it's my duty to continue, so I'm just going to take a sip of my drink, and then we're going to get right back into it. You feel me? Wow. Flashback. He was practicing his taijutsu katas on the training field when he sensed a presence. He was slowly developing his sensory abilities with the help of Kurama. He turned around to see no one, but he knew someone was standing just a few feet in front of him. "Who's there?" he asked. The air in front of him shimmered, and a man appeared. He wore a red sleeveless coat and pants, a green kimono underneath, and Geita sandals. He had long white hair and was very well built, standing over 6 feet. "Let's go, Jiraiya, my boy. So you could sense me. Very impressive. Do you know who I am?" Naruto answered as if he wasn't fazed. Jiraiya of the Sannin. Jiraiya grinned. Sensei told me that you mastered all 10 volumes of Fuinjutsu your mother left you in 10 days. I don't believe you, he said in a challenging tone. Inside, however, he was thinking, oh, Minato, Kushina, if only you could see your son right now, he thought wistfully. Naruto was also having some thoughts. His tone of speaking would suggest that he was familiar with my mother. But how? I know that he was Dad's sensei, which means he also was a Fuinjutsu master, but how close was he? Outward, he shrugged. Doesn't matter if you do or not. Your job's to test me and nothing else. Jiraiya was a little deflated on how Naruto was acting so detached. He knew that Naruto did not know that he was his grandfather, but it still hurt. Reining in his emotions, he spoke. Let's get this over with then. Okay, that was weird. Let's get this over with then. 3 hours later, he stood in the field staring at... Why 3 hours later? What? Okay. Staring at Naruto with a gaping jaw. Naruto was standing there panting. Jiraiya had tested him on every aspect of Fuinjutsu, both written test and how it could apply to battle. Obviously, he lost, but Jiraiya was seriously impressed at how the kid was able to apply Fuinjutsu in battle. The versatility was clearly there, along with a touch of unpredictability. What's the result? Both of them turned to the voice that had spoken. What? Oh, I thought Naruto said that. Oh, my bad. What's the result? Both of them turned to the voice that had spoken. The Sandaime Hokage was standing there with a small smile on his face, as if he knew what the answer was. He passes, Jiraiya replied, still in a daze. Naruto nodded at that and sat down with as much grace as he could muster. He probably fell back after that, asleep before hitting the ground. His last thought, I finally became a seal master. Flashback ended. Jiraiya had revealed to him after the test that he was his godfather. And initially, he was downright furious that Jiraiya had just abandoned him to the wolves. Hey, whoa! My boy Jiraiya's got reasonings. But after calming down and thinking it through, he realized that Jiraiya had duties outside the village walls, which is why he couldn't raise him. He didn't forgive him, saying he will have to earn his forgiveness. What? Give Jiraiya a chance, bro. Man, alright, bro. If that's how the book wants to go with it. Jiraiya looked relieved at this and promised to make it up for him. Before he knew it, 1 year had passed. Oh, so this is the time skip, actually. That was a flashback. And it was time for him to enter the academy. Walking along with his GG in the school quarters. Are you serious? That's definitely favoritism, bro. Okay. Showing a Chunin instructor with a scar on his face and his hair shaped into a pineapple ponytail. Hokage-sama, is anything wrong? Hiruzen waved him away. Nothing at all, Iruka. I just came here to bring Naruto. He will be starting from today. Iruka looked at Naruto, and Naruto was instantly able to recognize the look. After all, he had received it many times. Looking into the class... What? Iruka hated him? What? He saw the same look on many of the students' faces. He sighed. It'll be a long 6 years. Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your boy, the Anime Alba here. I hope you guys enjoyed that part. Link to the story will be in the description. Link in the description also to the Discord. We have a permanent link now, so hopefully there should be no more issues with expiring invites and such. So that should be about it from me. Like, comment, subscribe. I respond to all comments, heart all comments, like all comments. I really do appreciate them. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the love. And yeah, this is your boy, the Animabu. I am out. Deuces.